Welcome to the Logosphere. This is Chris Stites, here as always with JD Roof.
Hello, good evening.
And this evening we're here again with our good friend Kal Holczler, who...
You got it right.
Yeah, of course.
I like it.
Who described himself, I think, well as a humble, inquisitive Jewish mind.
That was a joke. Well, it's true.
It is true.
Humble? I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Jewish, certainly.
Certainly. Not sure about that either. The Jewish thing is on the table as well. I mean, I think that's why we're talking this evening.
I don't know if I get to pick being Jewish or not, but yeah.
You're sentenced to Judaism?
We're going to talk about it.
Okay. But this evening we're finally going to wade into the water a little bit since, I think that you're informed, you have some interesting opinions, you're well read, you have a good perspective on what everyone is noticing in the world, Israel and Palestine. What else can we call it? How do we wade into this water?
Well, you know what? I got to wait. This was on the top of my mind. Can you explain to me that, because you hear this term Zionism? Mm-hmm. What is that? Can you define that?
First of all, I want to preface that I don't have any particular degrees. I'm not an expert.
Well, that's why we're talking to
you. In any of this. There's so many smart people. Hopefully we will get to talk about some of them and make reference to them, and then we'll put them in in the notes afterwards. I am reminded, yesterday, as I was planning on coming here and I was taking some notes, I had a friend who reached out to me from Canada, and she was like, I got to talk to you. My heart is ripped to shreds. I'm confused. Can we set a time to talk about this topic? And I'm like, absolutely. So hopefully this would be an introduction to that conversation.
Sure, it's a worthwhile topic. There's a lot of people who aren't experts that have something to say about it, and we're three of those people.
I'm certainly consumed with emotion and opinion and overwhelm around the topic, so it's worth having a conversation. But I'm not taking any credit for, I define, and it's so obvious, but I have to say it because in that regard, I am humble.
Do you have an opinion on why it is such a divisive topic?
It's kind of
it's an area that's relatively small geographically.
Right.
It's far away from us, but the American political public mind is fixated on this particular topic that none of us really has a strong grasp on.
Right.
But it's captured us. Why?
One way of answering it is Douglas Murray, who is someone really worthwhile looking into. And if you're not familiar with his work, please go ahead and get familiar. He has been very outspoken, pro-Israel, pro-democracy, pro-morality, pro the principles that 10 minutes before this particular iteration of these atrocities was common sense, and incredibly, he's become a really good friend to the Jews and defending what we're fighting for. And he talks about, I don't remember the exact term, but he talks about how anti-Semitism has shifted and morphed, and its definition has changed. And the latest iteration of that is basically, right after the Holocaust, we were persecuted for not having a state. We're Polish, we are German, we are Austrian, we are Hungarian, we are Russian. Go get out of our land, go have your own land, and now we have our own land. And here comes. Zionism is the latest iteration of a way of defining anti-Semitism. Now, this statement alone, there's hundreds of hours of disagreement anti-Zionism does not mean anti-Semitism. We're just criticizing the state of Israel in their policies. And granted, Israelis will be the first one that would actually criticize. We believe in open debate, free speech, and there's a lot of criticism towards policies. But what you're finding and here's another author and another individual, Gad Saad, evolutionary biologist or psychologist, evolutionary psychologist in Toronto, professor in Toronto, wrote a book, The Parasitic Mind, a must read, because as we discussed before this conversation, there's going to be a lot of we're going to look at Western civilization versus anti-Western civilization, like East and West. We're going to look at pro-democracy, anti-democracy, the previous versions of Antifa, which then went into BLM, that now went into Free Palestine, as far as a banner. They're all the same iterations of this delusion, parasitic virus that is eating away at the youth of the world. I was going to say America, but it's the same thing in Canada, the same thing in London, the protests as those are unfolding. So to answer your question, why is it happening there? I think you're going to get a different answer based on the axioms that you're holding, if you're speaking to a religious person versus a secular person. Jordan Peterson, I was listening to him today, and his latest interview was with an individual that is an expert on urban warfare, who works for the United States, was in the tunnels in Gaza, and highly recommend for somebody to kind of listen to that conversation. And it's very interesting because I've seen him multiple times say that, I've heard him say it, define why do people hate Jews so much, or especially Israel. And he puts an interesting spin. His spin is more like seeing the success of a minority, a young country, super successful. Obviously, it's going to get lots of people being outraged and jealous and resentment, etc. Yeah. But when I listen to that, I'm like, yes, and it doesn't fully capture it. I think it's a biblical. It's a biblical source. It's not. What's happening psychologically, and what's happening economically, and what's happening geographically, and what's happening culturally. I'm like, all of those are manifestations. I'm going to say something, and then we can dissect it. The 2nd October 7th happened, and even before that, but what happened basically meant all of our Jewish friends came together so much closer, and a lot of them mourned, a lot of them cried, a lot of them were outraged, a lot of them were, every human emotion you can possibly think, to kind of watch a modern version of a Holocaust unfolding in front of us. If Jews don't have a biblical claim to the land of Israel, if its claim doesn't come from the Bible, we have no claim. Now, that's very controversial because you can go into international law, you can go into sovereignty, you can go into if someone attacks you in war and it's a defensive war and now new boundaries were established, you now have claim to that land. And that's another 100-hour conversation. Stolen land. The United States is stolen land. Canada is stolen land. And New Zealand is stolen land. Every land, the majority of the lands that we now civilized people currently live on, is stolen land, quote unquote, as in it once belonged to somebody else. But it's a biblical war, so it can't answer that question with kind of going, let's look at the universities and let's see where they're being educated. Yes, and if Jews as a nation and as a people and as a civilization can't make the claim in it being a transcendental biblical claim, then we have no claim.
Speaking of biblical claims, to what extent do you think it's an influence, a Christian resentment towards the Jews for not believing in him as the Messiah and effectively killing him? Does that...
Wow, you're going there.
Now, the interesting thing I've thought about this...
No, but that was a conversation with regards to anti-Semitism for many years.
Yeah, but now it's the secularists that are mostly the anti-Semites, so to speak. Now, there's this belief I have, whether it's true or not, that the Christians actually support Israel's claim to Palestine.
Many Christians. There's an entire movement.
Is it because they'd rather have the Jews there than the Muslims because it's closer to their faith ideologically, or is it because they believe there's some biblical story that that has to do with the end times and the way things need to be so that everything can be set up for the second coming? And
okay, so let's dissect this for a second.
How much does that really impact people's conscious feelings about this? And does it actually have a significant unconscious influence on...
So let's first state the obvious.
Okay.
There is no one Christian body, right?
Mm-hmm. Is there a one Jewish body? More so than a Christian body, maybe? It's more so. Homogenous?
I want to say more so because you have more...
It's smaller.
Well, God, these are such complicated topics. one question to ask, and I don't know the exact number. One question is to ask how many Jews are in the world, how many of them are actually religious, observant, versus secular. So that's one conversation. I think 90% are not observant and religious. And I think at this moment, there's around 10 million citizens in Israel. Not all of them, 2 million of them are Arab. And I don't know what the Christian population is. I think between the rest of I think there's around 16 million Jews.
In the world.
In the world. The loudest, most successful minority. With the most Nobel Prize winning, most geniuses.
They stick together and they are disproportionately successful and wealthy.
But what do you think the success to that is that they've kept the same kind of laws and ways of being, for so long.
Remember that thought, the Christian Christ killing, yeah.
Yeah, but like with Judaism, my observation, I mean, I'm not Jewish, but I grew up around a lot of Jewish people.
Right, you're saying.
There's a following of the Torah and the laws, and that's been passed down for 5,000 years, and it really, I mean, there's debate, but you know what I mean, like it's a long history. It's older than both the other Abrahamic religions.
Correct.
Way older, and it's followed
1,000 years before Christianity,
right?
And
I mean, Nietzsche himself, who's sometimes considered to be somewhat controversial and anti-Semitical, Nietzsche,
yeah,
but he said that the nation of the Jewish nation is it like German or Austrian or Dutch. These national identities pale in comparison to the depth and the strength of what the Jewish people are.
Again, you can start with one axiom that was the promise of the designer and creator of all things, and the conversation about chosenness. You could interpret that as superior, or you can interpret that as more responsibility. So you can see that as more like they hold an obligation to, you'll hear this often, be a light unto the nation. But if you're tasked to uphold a particular moral conscience, and Hitler claimed that. I mean, the two things. What was it about the two things? If you want to eradicate, if he was going to be successful with the Third Reich, it was going to be to put an end to human conscience, and in order to do that, he needed to annihilate the Jews. Like, if you want to learn something about you, just go to your enemies. Like, not necessarily someone who's like, has some bias with making you look as best as possible. Like, find your number one enemy. So, like it or not, the fact is that the Jewish conscience amongst non-believers or amongst pagans all through history, recorded history, we've represented an ideal. Now, that ideal could be really inconvenient when you don't want to live by it, and you can make an argument that what the West as a civilization became is Judaic Christian values. So you can say, obviously, Christianity was influenced or was like almost a continuation. If you ask some Christian believers,
well, they'd say Jesus
came to fulfill the words.
Yeah, well, or Jesus was the best Jew. That you've heard that trope, right? Like, it's funny, like he's the number one Jew, right? Because he was a Jew.
And arguably was the prophet.
Right.
And again,
right.
These are matters that I so can't speak to.
Right.
I do listen to hours and hours and hours of Christian sermons all the time, and Christian theologians. And I personally keep going back and forth. And I wish, as a good Jew, having grown up Orthodox, speaking Yiddish, studying Hebrew Bible, understanding Hebrew, studying Hebrew text for the first decade of my life or more. Like, I wish, well, I don't know if I wish, but it would be very convenient if I can just go, no, that version, that's the truth. All those Christian believers, they just believe in a false, delusional, messianic narrative that is so false and doesn't have any truth. Now, after dozens and dozens of hours with Jordan Peterson and thinkers like him, I'm still like, well, every moment I come to a conclusion being like, okay, that's just all made up. And then I listen to Jordan Peterson for an hour and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I pray. One of the things I want to accomplish in this lifetime, I want to die. When I die, I want to be able to say, that's true, that's not true, or I now understand it and I've decided X.
I wonder how many Jews struggle with Jesus and Christianity and considering the possible validity of that claim.
Right. Because there's strong argument either direction. Like there's a strong argument that believing that he was the Son of God is just absolutely heresy and preposterous and
Is that a
impossible.
sentiment within the Jewish community?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the Orthodox Jewish
Considered to
world?
be sacrilegious?
Absolutely.
Blasphemous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not so much, oh, we agree he was a great prophet, but he just wasn't
No,
quite it.
they don't consider him a prophet.
They don't.
Consider him a rabbi at best.
Mm.
Not killed by the Jews, killed by the Romans. But for that,
that's true. Though,
and that's
right?
historically
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
but
Technically.
exactly.
Yeah.
You're like,
But offered up by...
exactly.
Yeah.
That's why, and we're going to take an amazing leap right now.
Let's do it.
Which is a parallel to that logic. People go, well, there was a ceasefire, and I'm about to like make an argument against myself, pro-Palestinian, but then I'll come back to it. Which is like, well, what we know factually is that before October 7th, there was a ceasefire.
Right.
And then I hear Israelis and Jews go, well, it was unprovoked. I'm like, if you put a bunch of people behind a wall, now granted, maybe it wasn't a wall to keep them in. You can make an argument. Maybe it was a wall to like keep us safe on the Jewish side. But if their conditions were going to be dire and maybe even if their conditions were really positive, because I'm now thinking, okay, yeah, there was some really nice areas in Gaza, like luxury homes and luxury hotels, and you're on the beach side, but they were driven by an ideology, perhaps by Hamas as a governing body, but living conditions there were not very pleasing. You can make that argument. Now, you can also make an argument, well, they elected Hamas. Well,
To what extent?
to an extent. Did Hamas kill its rivals after its rivals won at a fair election? How fair the election?
I think Stalin was elected every term.
Yeah, Hitler was elected.
Yeah, so is Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
And so is the Ayatollah and the president of Iran.
They had
Right.
elections.
Yeah, they do.
But to counteract that, it's like even if their conditions were absolutely atrocious, when you start looking at Western campuses today and marches in the West today, like right now in New York City, they're like currently this very moment protesting. When a group of people is calling are calling for the annihilation of another person, for the annihilation of a people, something isn't morally right. Like when we try to free other people, we talk about let's give the oppressed group more power, more freedom, more liberty, more quality of life.
And you don't see that's what's happening now?
No.
What do you see?
They're just calling for to globalize the Intifada. Like one of the number one slogans on every college campus is to globalize the Intifada. Globalize the Intifada basically means kill all the Jews. Like from the river to the sea means let's free all the Jews in Israel. Let's slaughter and kill all the Jews in Israel. And when they go, and then
Is
let's
that
globalize
literally
it.
what it means, or is
Yeah.
that an interpretation?
No, that's literally what it means.
If you were to ask
When you look at it, I looked at it.
if you were to ask someone with one of those signs on one of those
They wouldn't
college
know where the
campuses-
river, they wouldn't know where the Jordan River is, and they wouldn't know where the sea is.
But what would they think they're representing, or what would they claim they think they're representing? They wouldn't.
Well,
be-
from hundreds of thousands of protesters, you're obviously going to find like you can see agitators, you're going to see educated people who really feel for the plight of Palestinians, and then you're going to find queers for Palestine, not remembering that if they actually were in Palestine, they will be pushed off a building and killed, like they kill gay people in Palestinian territory. But yeah, like you could delude a group of people that the plight of the Palestinian people is dire and is horrifying and is inhumane, and let's give them a better way of life. But that's not what they're proposing.
There's an interesting connection with...
Because if you're looking at the charter of Hamas, you're going to see X You're going to see the annihilation of the Israeli state. And when you speak to them, they're talking about, no, let's do October 7 again and again and again. So you're basically saying, no, we want to slaughter your babies and burn them alive and kill families and children in front of parents and parents in front of children. But then I want you to look at me like I'm the moral sounding good person that is just looking for more freedom.
Well, the activists here would not claim that they are anti-Semitic for the most part, I imagine.
They just say they're
this isn't about
anti-Israel.
the Jewish people. This is about the Israeli state.
Yeah, but that's
And
not
the
the
Israeli
case.
state is sort of a proxy for the U.S. government, for Western civilization, for colonization.
Capitalism, evil capitalists.
And it's interesting how, as a nation, America effectively has always been a major supporter of Israel, been close friends with Israel. But then alongside that, culturally, there's this strong anti-capitalist, anti-Israeli,
Now, what we're finding in every single protest, that when these quote-unquote Islamists, and let's call them that, because they might be children from parents that came from either Palestine, or Lebanon, or Syria, or Iraq. So let's say Westerners, white Westerners, and Middle Eastern descent that are protesting, they are not talking about, what I was going to say, in every country we're now seeing, they're not waving the flags of the countries that they're in. They're burning those flags. So yes, we can look at what's actually happening. They're just basically saying, let's get rid of capitalism. Let's get rid of the structure of the Western civilization.
We're peculiar. It's a strange mark of success as a nation that the nation starts to criticize itself to the point of self-destruction.
But we need to preface that
it's in these,
when you're seeing these protests, let's look at what are their mentality, what are they calling for.
When you mentioned countries, you mentioned U.S., Canada, UK,
right?
Some of the most wealthy,
right,
advanced, successful countries. And it's even within those, you go to the universities, you go to the pinnacle of success, progression within the most progressive, advanced countries. And that's where you find the most sort of intense form of this criticism towards the thing that it is the pinnacle of.
Right.
Well, and the other thing is just with that Berkeley protest, they finally arrested 100 and something people,
right?
And like half of them
didn't
even go to the school, and they're like almost like you could call them professional protesters. Like something bigger is going on.
Happening. Yeah, exactly. And you're touching on it.
Yeah,
I do see the appeal of that. You know, I was living in downtown LA during the BLM protests and riots and all of the madness that was going on down there. But
that COVID had complete immunity. Didn't spread.
Yeah, COVID was paused.
It disappeared for a couple of months.
Yeah.
It's a safe space for
selective
domestic terrorists.
Selective COVID situation. But I was fascinated by the whole thing. So I would go down. I mean, I was right there. There was just protests on the streets consistently.
What was that like for you?
I mean, it was exciting.
Exciting.
And you see the people that are the real, you know, there's going to be a whole crowd. There's the real well-intentioned person out there.
And then this person ready to be attacked.
And there's some people
that
are just sharks, dude.
Yeah.
They're in there and they're agitators.
Yeah.
And you know that they've got, I can imagine it's probably a similar appeal as to be like a terrorist for Hamas or ISIS or ISIL. If you're really in the, if you're in it so that it's like a gang mentality. You have a purpose and it's covert and you're a bit above and outside of everything.
Yeah.
I could imagine the allure of such a life.
I would look at faces, even currently. I would look at faces of people that are protesting. Like I just saw a guy who, I think he was you see a big picture of him doing this, and the leader of Hezbollah, the leader of Hezbollah uses this often. And I don't know the exact words, but it's almost like you came standing, you'll leave horizontal, like you'll leave dead. So it's like a call, a march for death. And he got arrested, and they identified him as a Hezbollah operative. But you look at his face, you see ecstasy. You see transcendence. You see like he has a purpose.
It's like a religious fervor.
He has a purpose.
Possessed by.
Well, he has people that will support him.
Right. Well,
his behaviors will be justified.
Right.
It's a higher cause.
Yeah, it's a higher cause. It's a higher calling.
Yeah.
It's his God. He's like worshiping his God.
Yeah.
Basically. But the funny thing is, if you can contrast it with, like the '60s protests for human rights, right? You know, if they could go back in history, I bet you at all those different campuses where, you know, they're using the fire hoses on people, those people were there for a real cause. Like, you know,
they were
like
changing the world.
Yeah, the Vietnam War. Like, you didn't have professional paid protesters. You didn't have George Soros.
But you still had the middle America, you know, just white picket fence people who were saying damn hippies,
but what I'm saying is,
and get a job,
right,
cut your hair.
Of course, yeah, you had that. But I'm saying at the protests back then, when, you know, our parents
do we know that? Do we?
Yeah,
do we
but they
know how
were
different
college
it
students
was?
then. They were that's kind of.
I mean, we would like to believe that. We don't know how much
but
the FBI
was that
is
the-
I mean, maybe it could be
involved.
Russian KGB trying to. I don't know, but you know,
Was that the infancy of what we now see today?
Yeah.
Did that just evolve into something else, until it finally turned into, you know, we are the 1%, 99%, and then, you know, remember the Wall Street protest, Occupy Wall Street. You know, I was in Boston during those times and went down when everything was really, you know, but it just seems like whatever that was, like you said, it's interesting how it's just changed forms.
You have to go from global to local and kind of look at why would an individual decide on a random day to do X behavior? Like, I'm not moved by what's happening in Ethiopia or anywhere in the world, unless if I have a personal connection, a narrative that drives. So you have to look at who's depressed and who is looking for a cause and who lives a meaningless life and who's looking for, like, okay, we've lost the plot in the West and people don't feel like they have a chance. Like, why wouldn't I join my best friends, my classmates, and, you know, maybe get paid, maybe not get paid, but at least feel like
you're part of
life
something.
is exciting.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting in some boring ass gender studies.
Well, it's funny because
like,
when
how
you
can tolerate that,
when you see these interviews and people ask like specific questions about like, okay, so why are you here? Like, this happened. This happened in all the protests recently in the last 3 years.
some were like, I don't know.
Yeah, they don't even
look
know.
At each other.
They're just
They're
like,
why are
oh
we
yeah,
here?
Joey called me
Yeah.
and said, hey, come down to the street and pound your hand on the sand.
I think if you
know?
zoomed in, you're just going to find primal human emotions. You're not going to find this like very, give me 2 hours. I'm going to give you a good
Breakdown.
intellectual argument, a theological
yeah.
conundrum, or like a sophisticated philosophical, like, no.
But within that mass, there are select individuals that are driving things that do have.
That are the instigators. They are that are the ones calling.
I feel like it's different though than the '60s. I just do. I just it's a hunch that there's more. Maybe the world is just there's more political moves happening behind the scene. You know, because the one thing that I read this report a couple months ago about how at the BML protest there was pallets of bricks placed.
Yeah.
And through shell companies, and this is not conspiracy theory stuff, right? Through shell companies, you can literally trace it back to George Soros and people like actors like that. And it's like, okay, so you're going to have a bunch of people, you know, okay, here's the protest, here's the time, send out the Facebook message.
They are being paid.
Yeah, and then oh, there happens to just be a bunch of bricks here. Right? Like, of course, like
all the tents.
Yeah, right? Yeah,
all the occupation right now in
they're paid
universities,
for, right?
the all uniform, the same colors.
The tents are all set up by organizations.
Well, did you see the thing where they were asking for vegan food at the New York one? That was hilarious. Have you heard about this? So they take over this building at one of the campuses. It was Columbia, right? Or it was one at Cambridge? Or
I think it was Columbia.
Columbia. And they take over and they're going to do, they're trying to, I don't know.
They have a press release of what their demands.
Yeah, and they're trying to kind of do like a Gandhi kind of thing, like we're going to starve, like, you know, the kind of the Buddhist thing, right? Hunger strike kind of thing. And then they request food, and they're requesting like vegan food. And then when they don't get the food, well, actually some food was sent,
like
but
oat milk.
Oat milk, all these specific requests, and then when the university doesn't comply, they go, oh, you see, the university's the problem. And it's like, wait, you're illegally taking over a building and then requesting the university to pay, like, give you food, vegan food, oat milk, like, come on. That's so, like, that would have never happened in the 60s. Are you kidding me? Right?
Welcome to pussified.
It's weird. It's like a
civilization.
diluted cause. Maybe it goes back to people are just starving for something, right? Because we've gone so far away from religion, just full stop. Doesn't matter which Abrahamic religion or Buddhism. It's become this secular thing. I mean, Kierkegaard talks about it, Christendom, right? He's got a famous essay on it. And he talks about Europe and how there's just a lot of these guys that will go to church on Sunday, but they don't, like the term Jack Mormon, that's like a slang term. So, in the Mormon religion, like somebody that's not following the actual Mormon, laws and what you're supposed to do.
Like most Jews probably too.
Right. Like
secular Jews.
Secular Jews. That's another term, but like they would call a Mormon that's kind of on the outs a Jack Mormon.
It doesn't mean anything anymore.
Right. It doesn't have the depth and weight.
And it's not even a matter of choice.
Right.
People have just lost the ability to sink their teeth into religious doctrines.
I'm trying to remember the name of the author. He does Socrates in the City, a show that if you're not familiar with, please look into it. But he just wrote another book. It was a follow-up book that he did last year. It's called Religiousness Christianity. And he writes about the German church prior to the Holocaust and the similarities that was happening then.
Say more. Because the question I've been trying to form is, what is the through line in your view between what happened in Germany in the late 30s and the early 40s and what's happening now? Because, I mean, Hitler was
A response.
But he was not religious.
He was an atheist.
He was an atheist.
But he fooled the entire German people because he talked about God all the time.
Did he?
Yeah.
He
was only
represented himself as
100%.
being God-fearing?
Yeah. He built a relationship with the German
I thought he was out.
church.
I thought he was openly...
No, because he was going after the communists. And one of the talking
communists
points,
were like that, right?
Communists were open atheists.
Yes.
And the German people were fed up being taken over by communists. They just saw a few other countries completely lost to the communist cause. So he started with the first enemy of the Nazi party was the communists. And only after he had
and that's why they called themselves social. What does Nazi stand for?
National Socialist.
National Socialist.
Yeah, right.
Like he went after the communists, then he went after the socialists. Mm-hmm. So even like the very party, like they were killing
the Bolsheviks,
which were the communists.
Yeah.
And then went after the unions, and then it went after the Jews. And
he accused that there was a conspiracy between the Jews and the Bolsheviks, that they were in bed with each other.
Right. These stuff go so deep.
Now, is that connected at all, do you see, to what's going on in the world now with the anti-genocide?
I think the anti-Semitism that has not gone anywhere.
There's an ambient level of anti-Semitism that we've always had,
but it didn't get created. It was underneath the surface, that was covered with being modern, being civilized, being, we're in America, we're in London, we're in Europe, we believe in free speech, let's give other, and all of a sudden the permission was the switch.
The permission was granted.
That you can now do this and still be protected by Western demented powers. Mm-hmm. Now it's open season, and we see this in every major city.
And we just couldn't keep a lid on it anymore, and it erupted.
Right now we don't know where it's going to go. We have no idea. Europe is tilting to the right. Now this doesn't mean fascist.
Didn't that just happen?
Yeah.
All the different parties and all these different countries have all swung.
Not all of them, but a huge percentage.
Huge
the EU,
percentage of right.
Center right.
It's like a right wave is happening.
Literally.
And I mean, if Trump gets elected, that'll be like the...
So I don't think we're seeing fascism, but hold on. We might not see... Maybe it's not fascism and maybe it's not Nazism, but maybe it is traditional conservatives are fed up with DEI. They're fed up with transgender issues. They're fed up with the loss of the purpose and soul of our country.
Now, Nazism is thought of today as conservatism gone awry, that it's extreme, perverted conservatism. Like if you're very conservative, you're,
what would that be
pigeonholed as a Nazi.
If you believe men are men and women are women, you're considered a Nazi.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
now that the conservatives are, so if the Nazis were anti-Jew, now the conservatives are pro-Israeli. It's interesting how it's the liberals now who have taken such a hard stance.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. How the right to the left.
Well, you know,
flipped.
Yeah, well, and I have a thing too, because when Nazism was smashed and then it kind of trickled over to America after the war, it went into like the neo-Nazi kind of movement, white power, and they adopted the swastika. And I think that also, you know, like Michael Malice, the anarchists, like they but again, a lot of the anarchists lean that way.
You can't get rid of hate. You can't get rid of ideology. You can kill a few Nazi
guys,
leaders, but then I'm sure there's thousands.
And where did that movement go? Because there was still, we knew about the skinheads and the, you know, the KKK.
They don't have any power, so
they have nothing. There's like
the right at the moment
does.
They come out every once in a while still, right?
Yeah, they come out once in a while. But the last time they came out was in that Florida march where they were all like blood and water or whatever their saying is, and they were. It turned out that a lot of them were like FBI informants, like trying to stir the pot. Have you heard about that?
Yeah,
like, yeah.
Where do you think that all went? I just
saw the leader of that group being interviewed by Patrick David.
I wonder where that sort of cultural momentum found itself, because it's just too taboo, I think, to be, you know, openly. You have to be.
I don't think we've seen half of it yet. Like we're in the beginning of. Okay, here's a. Let's go somewhere else for a second.
Okay.
For the last 20 years, you have Gaza, you have the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, quote unquote. In my eyes, it's Judea and Samaria. From my point of view, that should be sovereign Israeli land because it's biblical homeland, the heartland of Israel. But let's just call it West Bank for a moment, given the current Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, who's serving, I don't know which year, it's 20 years of his 4-year election. But granted, they always love doing that.
Yeah.
You elect them and then they stay in there forever. But he was, democratically elected. What was I going to say about it? If you open a textbook today in the West Bank in any Arabic school, and especially in Hamas territories in Gaza, like everything you read is about killing Jews, taking back our land, like just erasing history, like literally from the names of towns that could not be more Jewish. Like the Arabic name for where the Temple Mount stood is temple. Like their word, like which temple? Oh, the temple the Jews had there. Like even the Dome of the Rock was put there, and in the words by the people that put it there is like, let's find where the Jewish temple stood and let's put a mosque or a shrine on top of it. Like it was in context of what was always known by everyone of what that place was. Now, I'm going to say something very controversial that I've never heard anyone say, but it occurred to me a few days ago. And it would be very interesting to see what the next 20 years, what will happen. I personally don't think October 7th was about October 7th. What do I mean by that? I think the children that felt the torture and the pain and the horror of what happened to their friends and loved ones in Israel through October 7th, they are now going to grow up with a stain or a rupture in their soul. And who they will become as professors, as rabbis, as leaders, as Supreme Courts, as government officials, like when they come of age and are 15, 16, 17, 18, I believe that's when the Jewish people will start seeing what Israel is actually meant to be in the world, as far as a holy, sacred, unapologetic superpower. And the reason why I started with the education on the Arab side, if you have the last 20 years of textbooks, children, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 6 years, 10, if all they know educationally is hate toward Jews, and none of us as civilized people can walk in a town and being like, let's just kill 1,000 children because they have a bad ideology. But you know the ideology is going to be the thing that will have them grab a gun and blow themselves up, because that's what they do all over the world. Like jihadism, like you can't misinterpret it. Like they just believe in slaughtering Jews because they want to do away with us. So what would a Jew need to do to all of a sudden create the warriors that will actually defend the state of Israel and the Jewish people on October 7th? Like, think about it for a second. It blows. When I thought of it for the first time, like my brain just went, because the current government in the state of, in Israel, it's not about them. It's not even the people fighting in Gaza right now. It's the children that are not soldiers anymore, soldiers yet.
How many people were affected by October 7th? As far as casualties are concerned.
Around 1,200 killed in the first 2 days of the episode. And around, I don't know the exact number, I should know, 234 hostages.
But as far as an incident creating a reaction that eventually evolves into something significant.
And now you continue having, like, babies were burnt in ovens.
But I think about how many casualties, Jewish casualties, were there in the Holocaust?
6 million.
6 million.
Half of the Jewish population.
And so do you see that as a similar?
Yeah. What for the last generation that gave birth? I mean, here we can get really trippy. We can get like esoteric of like you know being in recovery. Like we know it is the most devastating moments of our lives that creates the foundation of everything of the awakening. Like humans, like the tree isn't born until it decays. Like there's nothing in nature that actually blossoms as beautiful as they possibly can blossom to become what they are without,
unless something dies,
death,
fertilizer. It needs
like
fertilizer,
destruction. But like go into the plant, like go into anything.
Yeah.
Death?
Are you saying that October 7th was fertilizer for the Jewish people?
Yeah. Actually,
that is controversial. Oh God!
I say that, but I
hasn't
say
that
that
story been happening for thousands of years?
But I say that with the sacredness of a sacrifice. I don't say that as from the minimizing the experience. I'm saying if you had to light the human heart on fire and do it in a righteous way, I mean, it's horrifying to say because it's almost like saying that the Holocaust was justified. You know, thank God I'm not a rabbi and I don't have to answer to anyone. I grew up listening to stories of the Holocaust my entire life. I have a grandmother who's 95 who last I saw her a few weeks ago, she told me stories of when she was 16 years old, having just come out of the gas chamber. Like she's one of the only humans that actually went into a gas chamber, waiting for the gas to go off, like to be cleansed.
Yeah.
And she got out of there through miraculous stories, and she now has over 1,000 plus offsprings. So I grew up my entire life listening to stories.
Wild.
1,000 plus.
1,000? From what children, grandchildren?
Yeah. She had 8 kids. Each of the 8 kids had approximately between 12 to 18 kids. I'm one of 12. And she looked at me and she's like, Kalmi. It's my Yiddish name. She's like, Kalmi. And this was like not like a made up number. Like one of her grandkids created a book with every single name in it. Like a family tree.
That's such a flex.
That is a flex.
To be alive and have 100
that's
offspring.
like a
1,000.
1,000?
But like what's Genghis Khan? But what's Genghis Khan's number? It's like millions.
Like she looked at me and she goes, it was 1,013, and then she smiled and she goes, but since then there have been like 2 twins born in the family. So even at the book was at 1,013, but there was more since then. And my sister's had a baby 2 weeks ago, and I have another sister was about to give birth. Like they just. So my point being, back to October 7th, there is something, and as human beings, and as you know, those Jews being my brothers and sisters, I have to be careful how I say it. But do atrocities bring forth something? And we also have to remember, like, where do we go when we die? Where do we come from before? Mm-hmm. Like, how much of our lives do we actually choose? Like, and we can talk about that forever, but we don't. So if X bodies, like, if you kill my body, or if you chop my body up, did I go somewhere? Or did my body go somewhere? Like, am I my body? Like, I don't know. I don't think so. So it's like if you get rid of X amount of people, Jews just died, like we see the atrocity of the inhumane form of death, but like when their souls pop out of their bodies, do they mourn? Or do they then go back into a different cycle or have completed their mission?
Yeah, but I can see what you mean by like the psychological scar.
But the psychological scar definitely,
yeah.
and I'm certain of it.
Yeah.
We'll be able to track it, just like these Arabs are growing up with so much hate.
Right. It's a scar that they have.
There's this concept of ancestral trauma.
That too.
Yeah.
What do we think of that? What's the validity to that? I've been thinking about that recently. It's come up. It came up when we were talking to Jim Whitmore and the wars. I mean, how much is what happened in World War II, World War I?
Perpetuation.
What kind of ripples?
Well, like
has that
yeah, I mean,
put into our own personal lives? The
anxiety, I know
the anxiety I might feel on any given Tuesday. How much is that related to the fact that there was these
in your DNA,
massive
in your
conflicts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at
destruction and death.
Remember 9/11?
The battle
we were
of
all alive
Stalingrad,
then, right? That's another. We lived.
Point.
I was a senior in high school when the towers went down, and I literally joined the military. You know?
Did?
Oh yeah. Like I signed up the next week, and
Looking for a cause.
just and that's an interesting.
Was that a
thing.
response?
It was definitely.
was
I mean,
it like-
I'm
Or was that an excuse?
a shifty bastard. I'm
You were just trying to skip town.
yeah,
You had some people that were looking for you.
Everyone is going to support me.
I'll do.
wanted a little GI
I'll throw a fake cause.
Dodge some drug dealers and get the GI Bill.
Yeah, get out of there. Get out
Like
of
you were
town.
a communist yesterday, and now you're a patriot.
But in the country at that time, I mean, what other cause can you see everybody getting? It doesn't matter where you come from.
But
what
did you
political,
feel like you got swept away by the reverence or the fervor of?
Once I
something
joined
bigger?
and I went through boot camp, and you do all these oaths and this brother team, they break you down, they build you up, right? This whole thing. Then you start kind of feeling like, I'm part of a cause, go get out there and get the day kind of thing, and you're with your brothers and
Which I think is embedded.
Yeah, and
community.
Yeah, and it is a beautiful thing. I mean, discipline will give you like a freedom. and that's a JP kind of thing too, and it's a lot of other guys' things. But yeah, I did it being shifty though, if I'm being honest. Like I really was just trying to skip town and get the heat off of me. Because I was a scumbag and I was just a drug. Yeah. I was. I really didn't have much to. I wasn't going to do well in college, right? So, but it was. I remember there was other people in my school and in the community that did like they got caught up in that fervor. It swept them away.
But I want to be careful where we took that conversation, because once I made I laid out, okay, this is what Arabs Palestinians are learning. And then the Jews went through this atrocity. And I'm not saying, like, my train of thought isn't, and now they're going to become hateful, trauma-induced individuals that are now going to want to fight it back. I'm not saying that. I think when I talk about Israel being what it can be, I'm thinking of it biblically. I'm thinking of it virtuously. I'm thinking of it as being unapologetic. Like, Israel, at this very moment, is ending a period, and this is also a controversial thing that I don't hear other people talk about. Well, maybe some. If you're more religious Zionist, more people are talking about it. We're completing a cycle, we're finishing a period in Israel where secularism was a thing of the state. Secular people don't have as many children, religious people do. Israel is becoming more religious conscious. There's more religious Zionists serving in the military, more religious Zionists serving in the government. Sabbath.
And, I asked Zionists. So what's the definition of that? Is that like
one definition is the right for self-determination on our ancestral homeland.
Okay, so that's
if you're like one definition, and it's many things, it's movements.
Zion is the Holy Land.
Zion, Sion, which is the word came from, which is Jerusalem.
Okay.
Sion is Zion.
And then
Zionism.
But it's about a claim a people have to a land.
For a land.
A religious claim.
Right. Well, if
Zionist.
you're looking at Herzl, if you're looking at the founder of modern Zionism, saying that it was a biblical religious claim might be a bit far-fetched for him because he was very secular. But that's one of the statements that I started with. Like, if you can't have it be a biblical religious claim, then you don't have a claim.
Yeah, what's the other claim? What's the alternative claim?
The alternative claim is that religious and non-religious, like, we've lived there for the last 2,000 years. Like, there's never been a Palestinian state.
Who are we outside of a religious, biblical
Right. That's where I
view?
go. It's like, you love Jerusalem and you love Hebron.
Is it just a genetic definition, an ethnic definition of what the Jewish people are?
Yeah. I mean, arguably this is our third commonwealth being built in biblical Israel.
What's the general sentiment among maybe secular Jews, mostly around mating with people who are non-Jewish, who are Gentiles?
The more of a religious individual that you're going to speak with, the more that's taboo.
Yeah.
Because they
look down upon. Would it be?
Yeah.
Your parents would say, "Can't do that. We're not going to support that." They're going to put a lot of heat on you.
It would go from organizations working really hard to rescue Jews that are intermarrying to
now a full like secular, non-believing, just like
run of the mill
Jewish person.
Yeah.
Are they dating outside, or are they still, you know, they're still not eating bacon, even though they don't buy the whole story, but they're still not eating bacon.
Oh my God. if you knew how often I have these conversations.
How do you feel about
I love bacon.
Yeah.
Don't tell my rabbi.
No, about dating non-Jewish.
Just lost my job.
Yeah.
No, my point being, you will find the Israeli who goes, I don't believe in the Torah. Like, I don't believe in the Bible. I don't believe in God. I don't eat bacon. You're like, can you explain that to me?
Yeah. Are you?
I just don't like it. You're like, why do you not like? What's the non-kosher fish? Like, not sushi, like oysters or etc.
Are you more or less attracted to non-Jewish people?
Personally?
Sexually?
Oh.
I'm more attracted to
Is there like
Jews. And I'm attracted more to Jews, but not for the physical standpoint.
But still from a sexual standpoint?
Not from a sexual standpoint. Well, let's define that. Okay, let's dive in that.
Okay.
Let's dive in. I knew he was going to get to the sexual. I don't know how he went from like Zion.
I can't help it.
A minute ago.
I know.
Tell me about your sex life.
I asked Zion from the get-go.
I was going to find a way.
Diss me, so,
I was going to find a way.
You guys were...
I want you to answer this.
When an Arab makes fun of somebody and wants to like curse them out, they'll be like the Zion Shali. Like,
but it's a curse word.
My cock.
Yeah.
Like, Zion, Sion, and Zion, like, they actually relate. I don't know how the name of like Sion being like.
So the word for Israel and cock are very similar?
No. We are all sober here. Dear audience.
I mean, it makes sense. But I know in the Muslim tradition, when a boy is born, it's the golden penis.
At the Zion Shali.
That's like
literally in Hebrew, at the Zion Shali is my cock. Mm-hmm. Sorry, audience.
Are you
Sion? Do you hear the similarity?
Yeah.
Zion and Sion. Like, I don't know if it's from the root. I have to like look into the etymology of the actual
the reason
word.
I asked, we talked about the ethnic and religious claims to.
But I want to answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
When I
I'm not going to let you wiggle out of this one.
When I look at a woman, personally,
okay,
what are some of the factors that turn me on? I want to know that we have similar ideals. I want to know that we have similar aspirations. I want to know I can talk about things that light me on fucking fire, like building the third temple in Jerusalem, about the Commonwealth of Israel being a prosperous, powerful, unapologetic Jewish state, religious state that brings morality to the entire world, etc., etc., etc.
That's what gets you going.
Yeah, actually, yes.
That's foreplay.
That is foreplay. Because I'm sorry to tell you, if I'm looking at a really gorgeous woman and she's stunning, and she doesn't speak my language, there's very little that I could do over a longer period of time.
But if you're more and more secular, that language becomes less and less
Correct. So that
meaningful.
hence my personal struggle of growing up insanely conservative as far as like religious, and having many years of progressive ideology, and before queer was a popular thing to talk about, or alternative lifestyles was a popular thing to talk about because it's been weaponized. Like those were things that were a big conversation in my life, and that a little bit about my background. So from the alternative lifestyles that I lived, to the practices that I engaged, to the communities that I visited, to the people that I did, they were outside of tradition. So now, on a personal note, am I more attracted to somebody who has the physical, the emotional, the mental, the psychological, the theological, the cultural reference? Obviously.
I mean, I think the
But you're asking a different question. You're like, would a Jew be more attracted to a Jew versus non-Jew? It's
which
like,
is
how
I
do you
think
answer that?
which is probably true for any group,
Ethnic groups,
right?
right.
In group
Right.
preferences sexually is going to be a thing. But what defines the Jewish people? There's something especially homogenous. There's something especially culturally tight that has kept it over such a long period of time from just blending into the cultural whirlpool that we're all.
So let's jump into
part of.
let's jump into the one controversial thought, which is when you're saying we are culturally a particular way, I believe that's a byproduct of something. When you're saying we are nationally a particular way, that's a byproduct of something. When you're saying we are economically a particular way, psychologically a particular way, any other way that you would say like, oh, this group is distinct from that group. People say, like Jordan Peterson, like we said earlier, like, oh, here's a small minority who are super successful. I think all of that is a byproduct. Those are axioms that live on something, and that something is, sorry to be very, I don't know even the right word, but that something is God. That something is
the way
spirit.
the way the Jewish people have stayed so small and have continued to be so successful
because we were given a particular mission in this world.
You're anointed.
We were given a particular mission in this world, a chosenness that makes us the way we are intrinsically.
Because God blessed you.
Yeah.
Do you believe that?
Yeah. Wholeheartedly. To the extent, and then he's laughing.
I mean, it's such a wild claim.
It's such a wild claim.
Like, what does that mean?
But let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about this for a second, because I go talking about bacon and talking about all the different rules and regulations.
I mean, this is like Old Testament stuff. If you
100%.
know, right? Genesis, and then all of
but
the generations.
Hold on a second. This is like crazy, because if all of a sudden I was struck by a truck, or a mob was going to take me into the center, and we've talked about this before, I think once, I would be willing to be ripped to shreds for my beliefs. So if I was about to die, there's a particular phrase in verse that I would recite, that I recite when shit hits the fan in my world, in my life. It's the same place that I go every morning when I do my prayers, the same place that I go when I'm tortured by my humanity. When I call out for the transcendence, I go to a place, an internal place. You do too.
Yes.
We call this place G-O-D, but G-O-D is more like an internal geographic destination. Because it's like, where's God? Is it here, or is it here, or is it here? Like, you cut me up, are you going to find God? So it's a psychological, psycho-spiritual domain of experience that has emotions and hormones and sensations that we refer to as God. If you ask me with regards to these Jewish claims, do I believe that we are distinctly different from other people? I would say yes. And I think that is the root of anti-Semitism. Now,
people resent that?
Yeah. Now, that's really bizarre, because it's like, if you are a very wealthy person and you are given the task to provide lots of jobs for a lot of people and give opportunity for people, one route is I can resent you for being that person.
Because you have more than I do.
Right. And that's literally the structure of what Marxism promulgated and which caused the Bolshevik Revolution, or at least in its subtext or premises. Or you can just go like, no, my left leg has X responsibility. My right leg has X responsibility. If my right leg wanted to be my brain, we have a problem. So to be in relationship with my eyes have its function, my mouth has its function, my brain has its function, my leg, etc., etc.
And also, I would not prosper if it were not for people who are more...
It doesn't make Jews better. It makes Jews have a particular task. I think other nations and other people also have a uniqueness, a beauty, a responsibility to actualize. You just are not us, and we're not you. And we're not trying to do away with you. We're not trying to diminish you. To the contrary, I want to make sure that you thrive the most. So then you look at the most modern version. You use Waze. You use an iPhone. It's like, how about all the fucking Palestinians and everyone that hates the Jews stop using all the innovations that the Jews ever innovated? Like, they will likely stop using most of the products they use. So again, you can go into resentment, but do you choose your IQ? Or I don't. Did I choose my color? I didn't. So it's like, it gets into the nitty gritty of...
Well, that goes into like
genetics,
the bell curve, you know. What is that? What's his name? Murray.
Charles Murray.
The
Like,
bell curve. He got slammed for that book, even though he wasn't really trying to say, oh, one's better than the other. He was just taking subsets of groups and saying, oh yeah, they're just better here. And it's like the difference between a man and a woman.
And the difference of a black football player,
right,
or basketball players, you can tell how well I know.
Yeah.
Versus like a really smart Asian and a really incredible basketball black player,
right, to
like a nurturing NR who's a woman versus a truck driver who's a man. Mm-hmm. It's like, try to deny it, but that's just like literally denying.
But on average, Jewish people are more wealthy.
They have a higher IQ.
More intelligent.
Yeah.
And they stick together.
Yeah. And you can give credit.
You can prosper from the innovations that they...
You can say education has a huge part of that. But my argument is like, even if you can prove that it's the constant education since a young age of understanding your place in the world and your place to contribute to the world and your heritage, and you know that, I think all of that, the drive to do that, is a byproduct of something underneath it. And people don't want to talk about that because it gets too wacky and gets too transcendent and you can't really prove it. And you're like, okay, so we've gone back to like the space in the atom. You're like, oh, I know it's solid, but it's not really solid. And, 90% of it is water and 90% is empty space. But like, let's not talk about that. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, that's interesting. The one point I wanted to make too about the whole what's happening over there is, I don't think the protesting and everything, going back to the Hamas and the Gaza border. When I hear some of these people, I get into these conversations. I don't think the ignorance, like America and Israel are so closely aligned. Like, we're
closely aligned in what way?
In every way. I mean, geopolitically. No, really, though. Really. I mean, to the point where...
But you have to... Which America?
Just
current administration? No.
But I'm talking about private businesses. I'm talking about innovation. I'm talking about technology. I'm talking about...
I just like making the distinction. There's many Americas.
Yeah.
There's the left and then there's the right.
Has the Biden administration gone...
No, but
they've been so bad.
No, they're bad. But I'm saying
they still must be sending money. And
they're still sending money.
They're sending money to Iran. They're sending money to Hamas. They're sending money to Israel. Like, they're just.
But I'm saying
greedy.
The two countries are so embedded in each other. Mm-hmm. Like, from people that live here and they go there and they have secondary house. It's like America's never gonna, like, what I try to tell people is America's never gonna get out of this fight. It doesn't, like, even with the Biden administration, who are probably the worst treating of Israel, probably in the history of administrations, right? Yeah. And I think we can all agree on that. Yeah. The softest, like, and then they try to call them out, like when they're
stop them at every step of the way.
Right. They're tripping. They're putting speed bumps up left and right. But
Ultimatums and
even
threats.
with them, there's still so much American support,
And they're still sending weapons.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they're still
right,
sending money,
right.
and,
Like we're so like we're basically the same country, really, in a weird way.
Well, historically, so many Jewish people have emigrated from Europe, over time, that have been hyper successful in this country.
Yeah,
And the
like
US
all of
the US has
Hollywood,
turned
like the
into
whole
a
reason why
superpower,
right? But the whole reason
is-
why,
And people call it an outpost of the United States.
but
due in
like
no small
every
part
major
to-
director in Hollywood back, dating 40, 50 years, right? Like Hollywood wouldn't be what it would be without Spielberg. You know what I mean? Like you could just go down
and
a long
the
list.
influence of something like quote unquote Hollywood in the
But
world.
we need to put it in preface that Hollywood was started by many Jews who were thrown out of every other industry. And it was their way of let's just start telling stories
Right.
of really interesting people around the world
Right.
through the medium of film. When they started, that was not a cool thing. Like just like some hospitals were started by Jews because they were kicked out of everything else. So it's funny now to be at the other side of it, where Jews decided, oh, we can't work in your workplace. We'll start our own thing, and now we're being demonized for being successful at it.
Right, and but it's just we're so
From the same people
yeah.
that would like to be successful in their own fucking lives.
right, exactly.
So it's like I want to be good at
Yeah.
something, but then second I see you being good at something, no, let's demonize you. Demonizing perfection, demonizing progress.
because maybe I
demonizing-
perceive that you didn't earn it, or that you were
But that's not the
given
case.
it by some.
But that's not the
some
case.
form of nepotism.
Well, and the other thing is like you can't like and this might sound funny, but you can't say that Jews have like white privilege really, even though it's but I mean
technically white.
technically right. But I'm just saying like because if you look at the history. I mean,
We
it's
were
insane.
the most,
I know,
or one of the most persecuted
right.
minority
So you can't,
in Portugal, in Spain, in
Right.
Germany,
yeah, like everywhere.
now in Europe,
Right.
Like the right
but
party
that's-
that just came in France, like literally, we went from, I want to say 600,000 to 400,000. I don't actually know the exact number, but like a huge jump of how many Jews lived in France a few years ago and how many Jews currently live in France. They all left.
What if the persecution of the Jewish people stopped, and with it also went their success?
Their success.
But that's an interesting
Right.
The scar thing, right? Going back to the scar thing, like how
That
it
it's
leaves a scar.
part and
This
parcel of-
persecution just causes this people to really
I
rise.
Forms
think-
the
I
people,
think
gives them
seeing-
something to rally
Seeing
around.
what the Jewish people had gone through in the last 2,000 years, I think that's literally how God is, and you heard it in one way, I'm going to say it in a different way, fertilized a people, readied a people, perfected Western
so
civilization.
bring it on, more oppression.
But when you got sober,
Yeah.
when I got sober, did we like?
But it's like that
Let
early-
me manage how much suffering I went through. Like maybe we suffer as much as we need to suffer to become the people that we've become, and we wouldn't be able to help the people.
It is one of the great ironies of our lives that we've talked about this already, but the most transformative, powerful growth experiences that we have are born from
The most torturous.
Horrible.
But
Painful.
if that were true, and since we love transformation and growth so much,
Let's
you-
make
you
them
think-
suffer even more.
You think we would
Yeah.
be going left and right, trying to fall into puddles?
But
and-
I think it's a difference between self-imposed suffering or hurting other people and God acting through people.
and giving you a chance to overcome something too. The actual because the
But I
overcoming
want
is
to come back to
that's
what you were saying
postmodernist
before,
too.
because I thought of the point I'm about to make, and I don't know how to make the point, and I've yet to figure out how to articulate the point. And I'll phrase it this way. I want to preface it this way. It goes, and maybe okay. Let's have this be an experiment because you might be able to voice how to make my point. You have thousands of people: Tucker Carlson, Jordan Peterson, Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, and the list goes on the right, conservative right, and I'm sure there's lots of people on the left, Sam Harris and the sane ones,
The young
not
Turks,
progressive.
The young Turks.
Yeah, like the intelligent, well-spoken, well-articulate, well-meaning, lots of resources of individuals on both sides of the spectrum. And we're all are talking about the destruction of Western civilization. And it's like we're all watching a movie and analyzing it, and nothing seems to change it. And then you have the same thing in the Middle East. You have all these countries doing what they're doing, and then you have all these individuals, really smart people. And I preface smart, resourceful people, because those are the people that could change it because they have the means and the influence. So I keep seeing all these bodies, these entities, these governments, these movements that are voicing a particular desire to see the world in a particular way, and the ship is still colliding.
It's almost like we're all just like barnacles on this
Add the effect
cultural
of forces working through us, not by us, leading us towards a particular destination, regardless if we fucking like it or not. Because you go like, you want to tell me, oh, the Roman Empire was very, very powerful, and they had amazing generals and had a huge, powerful economy, and then one day they didn't. Egypt, the same thing, and then one day they didn't. Persia, one day.
Oh no, it took hundreds of years for.
But my point being, yes, you can say mismanagement and greed, but I think all of that is a byproduct of forces working through people, shaping history that literally go beyond our preference. Because we're now watching the most prosperous civilization crumble. And you have the smartest people. I think Jordan Peterson, I don't know, I guess he's one of my gods, in the sense of he's one of my icons. Is one of, like, if you have to stretch intelligence in a particular direction, if you have to stretch articulation in a particular direction, if you have to like encapsulate someone who can speak to a group of millions of people and impact them into action, everyone is talking about what is happening to our civilization, and we're just seeing it burn. So I keep coming back to this one point that maybe the outcomes of, like when Tucker Carlson talks about we are crumbling, when other economists are talking about, no, we're heading toward collapse, when other sociologists are being like, this is not sustainable. You can't teach an entire civilization, an entire generation to hate its country and then think they're going to all of a sudden start making babies and love the country. And I keep thinking of, like, for religious people, this is an easy thing. It's like, okay, if we believe in a utopia, if we do believe in a coming of a Messiah, obviously you're going to have to see what's currently in place burn or change, transmute.
It could be like the night is darkest before the dawn kind of thing, like it's going to get to a point where there's going to be, hopefully not, but nuclear stuff. Some
form of apocalyptic.
Or is there ever one big real event? I mean, if you think about the fall of the Roman Empire,
it's hundreds of years.
It's a chapter in a book that we read during some grade in school, but it's something that happened. Shifts or periods of decline in that civilization would have happened over lifetimes.
Yeah, and it did. It was like all different factors.
Everything is emergent.
Yeah,
there's not a line in the sand.
Well, that's why I always go back to Nietzsche's internal recurrence theory. It's just repeating infinity over and over and over.
Like through civilization,
the same over and over and over and over and over again. And that was his way of trying to wrestle with the idea of, is the world metaphysically being or becoming? Because that's like an old argument, right?
Say more about that.
Well, it's
what's the difference between being and becoming?
Well, it's like, are we like a being? Like, are we like this
stationary?
Right? Are we this
is a thing?
Yeah. Are we intrinsically like a thing, or are we always just becoming a thing? Right?
And becoming.
Yeah. And well, the thing is it's an old argument from Heraclitus, and I think Aristotle.
Is there a fate to what it's becoming, or
right?
is it,
The whole thing
is
is
random.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
is it
no,
predestined.
No, well, he would.
Or is it mindless? Is it?
No, he would say that it's just reoccurring, like even down to
in a lifetime. Lifetimes or
in lifetime.
moments?
Like we're gonna keep doing what we're doing. This podcast again in our next life over. It's not the Buddhist thing.
Reincarnation.
It's not the reincarnation. You're not coming back as a fly or a flea or a dog.
You're saying we've done this life many times.
Many times, probably millions, billion. Who knows? Infinity.
Oh my God,
yeah.
I've never heard that.
You've never? Oh,
No.
you should look into
What?
Nietzsche's internal recurrence theory because it's his.
You live that way?
It's almost his religion.
Well, that's an idea, right? You should live
Yeah.
everything as if whatever
Yeah.
choice you're going to make right now, make it as if you had to
Make it again like 1,000 times
for eternity.
That's his
Because
way
not
of
because
what you ought to
not
do.
because it's a good maxim to live by, but because
Yeah.
that's what it is.
That's it. It's actually a beautiful philosophy. it's a beautiful philosophy. It really
Never
is,
heard that.
and it's very comforting.
Like parallel universes. Okay, that's might be an offshoot of that.
Right. Well, no, this is prior. I mean, this is.
I know. I'm saying like that's the closest. As far as a thought experiment.
It is. There's a couple people that have really dived into it. It really is expressed in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which is one of his famous books. But I've been going down the rabbit hole and trying to understand it more and more. And I'm starting to get my. I think it's his way of answering kind of the biggest questions of God and like the biggest metaphysical questions too of like what is being, what is becoming. And the way he gets away with it is he comes up with this idea of like you are living your life over and so there's no fear in it because you're just going to live on and on and on forever.
And every time
cycle.
you make an improvement, like you're refining or perfecting a behavior,
you're going to make that improvement
you're
again
gonna keep
next
doing it.
life.
Like this is like the next realization,
Right?
from the moment from before,
Right. It's just
and it's a natural
internal
progression.
Internal recurrence.
Let's get a little psychedelic.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of it's kind of like
Yeah.
peyote kind of shit, right?
Yeah.
Like that's something you would think about if you were, and maybe that's how he came up with it. But
So it's like
there is comfort in it.
It's almost like it collapses on
You
itself
think
and it comes
Nietzsche
back
was
in. And
popping
collapses.
peyote buttons?
No, I think.
Come on.
No, I don't think so. He was too joyous. He was a happy man.
We don't really know.
So with what's been
Sorry to take you down that.
with what's been going on in the world, are there Jews who have like abandoned their post, who are now out there on college campuses and who are against the Israeli state? And is that a
No,
class of people,
no.
or no matter how liberal you are, you could be a total?
No, I've
like,
encountered dozens of people, friends and friends of friends, who were on the progressive left.
how about people that are gender non-conforming and Jewish? Are they still? They're still.
It would vary. If you're gender non-conforming, you're likely
Israel?
progressive. And if you're likely progressive, you are sadly on the Palestinian side.
So even if you were a Jew, if you were gender non-conforming, you're probably progressive, and then you're on the Palestinian side.
Many.
That's so yes.
Many.
Yeah.
That would be the progressive Jewish left.
Yeah. And that's a faction that you're
That I'm familiar
with?
No.
No.
I know of them.
Yeah.
Do I know many
Does
of them?
exist. It's a fringe.
Yeah.
For the most part, you'd say that
It's a very good question because
even
that would say
even
like
moderately progressive
but the
Jewish
media
people
tries
are pro-Israel.
I don't actually know what are the statistics of who, if there was more or less that moved to one direction or the other direction.
But there's been a push in the media where you'll see like if you see like some people in like saying we're Jewish people, but we're against the Israeli
war.
state.
That's
Like
how
they're hyper focused in the media.
That's how they
Like, you've
frame
seen
it. Is
Yeah,
we
yeah.
just want peace.
We just want peace,
Right?
Yeah, yeah,
We wouldn't go out and say we want Israel to still do their thing, but we would just want everyone to put their
yeah,
guns
I mean,
down
those are
and
the
be
individuals that like want to befriend the rapist.
Nice. Uh huh.
Because it's like if we, it's true.
It makes sense.
If
Actually,
we could just
It's
be
like-
nice to those who are
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to
yeah.
annihilate
It's
us,
very
maybe we'll
secular.
assimilate.
Yeah, maybe they'll be nice to us too.
Yeah.
And not remembering that the very concept of doing good and contributing to the world and making peace was a Jewish concept. Like let's not. Was a biblical concept.
Well, you know
Like,
what's interesting
so
though?
you're standing on the concepts that were given to you with a twist of perversion because you lost your mind.
Well, I'm
or never had one.
I'm going to throw this out there because I know that if Peterson, they talk about this idea of separating church and state.
Yeah.
And America has that idea built into its system.
And
right?
I hope they get rid of that in Israel.
Right. Well, so exactly. So that's what I'm saying, because Israel was kind of, was propped up basically in modern sense.
Right.
By America and
as a secular,
as a
democratic.
Okay, you're right. Here's this government that's its own thing,
parliamentary,
and here's you got your religions.
But actually,
right?
Israel doesn't have that separation.
They don't have the separation.
Not like the United States. They have a chief rabbi.
Because I wonder if that's causing
that is
a lot of
political figure.
Right, but I'm wondering if that's what's causing the problem, like the fall of America right now. It's like the state has become Big Daddy, and it's like a new religion, right?
The microcosm in Israel.
And then religion's over here now.
The Israel serves as a microcosm because the same issues you're finding here in the United States between conservative and progressive, between state and church, is playing itself out in Israel.
Right.
Like all the protesting anti-Bibi.
Yeah.
Was
what a horrible thing to have there, right?
Yeah.
In that region, like we don't have Mexico sending
I think
bombs
all the progressive
over to
Israelis.
Us. We don't have Canada sending bombs over randomly. We don't have that kind of chaos in that region, right? So we kind of having our American identity. I mean, it's kind of effed now. I don't see a cause that could rally us like 9/11 together again. I don't know what could. Yeah. If Trump got elected, it would just make it more divisive. I think, right? Like, I like
Trump.
We could talk about Trump a little bit. I mean, it's funny because there's.
Are you a voting fan?
I always vote down the line libertarian. I have for many years, and
as in you like to have your vote not matter.
Yes, exactly. I've heard that, but it doesn't really matter in California, anyways. It's such a California's California. It's been a supermajority for 30 years, right? So I don't know what effect a conservative movement will really do here. I mean, it used to be a very conservative state. Ironically,
I think
it was very conservative.
I think it could still be.
You think it could turn back? I mean, Northern California and Southern California are like different places, though.
The majority. I mean, what is it, like 15 million? I don't remember the number. I do remember that there's more conservatives in the state of California than any other state in the union.
Just because California
Just because it's such a ginormous, but it just tells you there's millions and millions and millions and millions of conservatives that would like to have the government out of their business,
right?
And their churches protected.
Oh, of course, yeah. No,
and
I know.
Marriage between,
of course,
husband and wife.
Yeah.
It's fascinating the connection between population density and political temperament. That it's Los Angeles, it's San Francisco.
I think those cities should be cut off from the rest of the state.
But what is it about putting people...
The same with New York City.
Or cut California in half.
What is it about people living together in such
yeah.
close proximity that influences the average political
attitude? They
become
become deranged by not being around nature, by not farming, by not understanding the direct ramifications of being the steward of the land, you move into big city and you have different cultures and your culture doesn't really matter. You're surrounded by people from other countries. Mm-hmm. It becomes just like, oh, where's food come from?
I mean, you could make an argument that
not from the farm.
Yeah, right.
You could make an argument that because people in cities have more exposure to cultures other than their own, they're more accepting, they're more inclusive, they're more open-minded. Whereas in a more rural area where people are more culturally...
They're more closed off.
And ethnically homogenous, they're more concerned by things that might seem like they're other than what they're used to.
Yeah, they're worried about the other.
You would like this. Yeah. I have a friend who lives in Florida.
But it should be the opposite, excuse me.
No.
That if you were in a very sparse, in a rural area, you think that you would actually be hungry for outside influence because you're dying from a lack of... You go to a small town and it's
diversity.
It just doesn't have as much stuff coming in.
But there's a reason
there's
for
not
that,
as much
though.
Input, and so you think that you would be encouraging the gates to be open and for more things to come in, so that there could be more opportunities for prosperity. And you'd think in a city where everyone is on top of each other and there's bed bugs everywhere and it's just falling apart and it's chaos and you can't get from one side of town to the other without fighting traffic, that you would actually have more of a almost disease anxiety around
like
all of this. Yeah,
that's a conversation about multiculturalism. Like, is it a functioning, flourishing proposition, and we're now seeing that that's failing. But you're talking about more human instinct between
well, but
living in rural
there's
America.
there's a couple smarter minds than us that talk about that idea of like what separates like a left thinking person from a right thinking person, just full stop. And there is that idea that the left, a more left-minded, open, kind of arts major type of person is going to be more open to different countries.
Higher in openness.
Yeah, higher in openness,
Temperament.
their traits, right? And a conservative-minded person is going to be
higher in conscientiousness.
Yeah, they're worried about disease. They're worried about
cleanliness,
which is
order.
such a weird inverse with this COVID thing, because you would think that the conservatives in COVID, maybe 30 years ago, that it would have been different, right? But you would have thought that they would have been like, take the vaccine no matter what. We got to get everything clean and everything. But it totally inverted.
Yeah.
It was the left that was like, you're going to get fired.
I don't know if human nature changed.
Something happened.
The levers
we
of
got
power
scrambled.
and
Yeah. Something happened.
Yeah, the left became so open that it became almost like puritanical in its
Yeah.
moral righteousness and its beliefs.
Right. And the right just got like, fuck the man, rail against the, like the big pharmaceutical companies, which is what the left was doing back in the 70s.
Yeah, the
and
right
80s,
became
like,
the new hippies, like the
right. It's weird, right? Like
counterculture. So strange.
And the only place they could express their ideas was on mediums like this, because they were getting censored, and and that's all. It's not a conspiracy.
But
We know.
with Israel and Palestine, if you went to anyone on the street here, all the way in America, just if I walked down the street and I asked you what team are you on, everyone would have an answer.
Everyone would.
No one. Most people wouldn't say it.
Yeah.
Some people would. Most people would just say like, "Hey, I don't know. I'm not an expert on it.
It's horrible.
But
I just want peace."
reflexively.
But why isn't any other part of the world that known or that much in the consciousness of people?
Yeah.
That's why I think it's biblical. I don't think it's logical.
Yeah, like logic and reason can't explain it.
No.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there.
There was
I do.
Russia and Ukraine.
There's something there.
I mean, did you
captured
see
our
his
attention.
face when I said, I think we're actually blessed? Like, he turned colors. Like, for you, like, I was trying to imagine myself.
You're trying
What
to
is
flex on me.
No,
I get it.
well, you're trying
No, I
to
was
recruit
trying
him
to
in.
figure-
He's trying to get you into the
I was
fold.
trying
Can't be
to-
recruited.
You
I
got the
can't-
beard, dude.
It doesn't matter.
Come on.
I'm not-
I know. I have friends that have converted to
Yeah,
Judaism.
of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Of
No, you can
course
go
you
through the whole
convert.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Are they?
No. Yeah, no.
Are they,
yeah.
open?
Recruit
Are they
you.
open?
Yeah. You got to get invite only. But yeah,
invite only.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
more like we have to send you away. We have to reject you around 7 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a whole process to it.
And it's more like
Some people
that
that
you
have
to
gone
actually
through
choose
that.
it.
I do.
Yeah, I'm not going to name them, but people that are sober and recovery that have gone through the whole gauntlet of being fully converted to Judaism, and it's a whole thing.
I know
but it's a thing.
Catholicism that I grew up in. They also make it difficult. Maybe not as difficult. I don't know. What the
No,
exact process is.
Judaism is very strict, and but there is a way.
But
there is a way.
Catholicism is strict as well. My dad flirted with it. My mom was trying to bring him in, and he started going through the motions, and they have all of their, things. But then there's some religions that are just, like
Come on in.
Scientology.
The water
it's
is
like-
warm. Yeah.
Or
Most of Christianity is like that.
Islam.
Mormonism.
Yeah.
They're just trying to convert everyone they possibly can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to bring them to Allah.
But I think that actually adds a little sauce to the burrito wow.
How's your blood sugar? Get a check.
What is it?
Yeah, what is it? Okay, let's take a little blood sugar.
I'm dropping.
Are you?
But not bad. But for Jewish, like, it adds a little sauce to the burrito because it's not so easy to get in the club.
You want to keep the club.
You want to keep the club
inclusive.
inclusive, like exclusive, not inclusive. There's something to that, right?
I was listening to this rabbi, and I really didn't want to mention this conversation because it irked me in a little way. But he was talking about what the reform movement and the conservative movement, which all started like 200 years ago, what it did to the Jewish people, like how many Jews we have lost through the attempt of these organizations or movements, offshoots of Jewish orthodoxy. And those offshoots started because they wanted to save the Jews from persecution. So it's like, if we're going to be more assimilated and more modern, like our neighbors, maybe we can at least save ourselves. Mm-hmm. And in trying to save ourselves, we lost millions into assimilation.
What do you think about the full Hasidic Jews? Go down to Hollywood,
Like my parents,
and just like full curls and the
That's
jacket.
how my brothers and sisters.
Yeah, but when you're driving through Hollywood and you go through that neighborhood where that's like what's going
La
on.
Brea.
Yeah. What is that? What is that like evoke in you? Respect, love.
I mean, I respect it actually. Even when I see like a Muslim going, praying to the east, it's like cool, man.
But there's also,
you know what I mean? Like
it's almost like
there's a
Amish
devotion.
person.
That aspect I do respect.
Right. There's something to it.
And I want to make a distinction that not all Muslims are jihadists.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean,
and not all Muslims want to harm other people.
Right.
Although it's hard to distinguish who has it as an ideal. Like, I'm going to be nice to you because my temperament has me be nice to you, but my belief system actually calls for me to slaughter you. So, I mean, that's a conversation to be had. But Jordan Peterson and many others, they make that comment all the time. It's like, I would rather trust a Muslim who is willing to admit that he's not the final thing of all things, that there's a higher force that he's giving homage to and praying to and submitting himself to, rather than the secular.
Well, that's what
arrogant.
Tucker made that famous thing. He's like, you can't trust somebody that doesn't believe in God. I'd rather.
Have you been watching to Tucker?
I watch him once in a while. Yeah, he's good.
No, he is insane.
He's really.
He's about to tour.
He's insane.
Across the country.
Chris is not.
I won't go down the rabbit hole. It's contemporary investigation, I'm sure, but
yeah. I'm actually more open to him. He's more. It's funny because
I mean, he's had some crazy controversial stuff about Israel and accusative. Like, he's not been nice.
No, he's not.
He
nice
just comes off to me as I have him typecasted.
Yeah,
as a particular. Ben Shapiro's like that too. I concede he's a smart guy. I've seen him, on debates that are maybe in college campuses where I'm really impressed with. He's polite and he's intelligent.
Ben Shapiro?
Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
But still, for the most part, he's a provocateur. He's media savvy. He's got an audience that he's captured by. He has a reflex for producing content that's all about complaining and outrage peddling. And there's this kind of doom and gloom.
Yeah, I can see. I can get.
There's a branding to it that certain conservative media figures fall into. That to me, Tucker Carlson.
But you also have to ask.
To me, Jordan Peterson is like constantly getting dragged.
I don't know. You have to ask yourself if they're so persistent in taking a particular stance, like, what are the axioms that they're responding to? Like, maybe preserving particular values that have served the West for so many years as an axiom. So it's not like you don't have to debate it. If it's a conversation about doing away with marriage versus preserving marriage, there's no conversation to be had. Like, the argument is always going to be preserve marriage. Like, coming from a guy who used to host sex party.
Yeah,
but
polyamorous.
Yeah. I'm taking a stand for our civilization.
Yeah.
But I dipped in it though for a little bit. I got my feet wet.
But I'm trying to make a point is that I hear you. Okay, I don't like how they're scripted, taking a stance with regards to particular things. Maybe it's with regards to important issues that falling on that side of the argument is a given.
I guess I just don't believe him. I don't believe him. I don't feel that it's a good faith argument. And I could be totally wrong, and I haven't exposed myself to it.
Well, the one thing, it's funny because, with certain figures, what I've seen.
I trust Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, well.
Regardless, when he talks, I trust that he is telling the truth.
He's investigating.
Yeah. Well,
and you can tell he has not come to a lot of the same conclusions.
It's propaganda, essentially. To me, Tucker Carlson would be a propagandist. Effectively.
Well, but he's out though of the network stuff though.
Doesn't matter.
But that does that is
worse.
But that is a big deal though.
No, he's not captured by somebody else's.
Demon. He's doing his own thing now, and it is different.
But
like there's
if
views.
you could really escape the demon,
But
get away from the network. And
but
that doesn't mean
for myself, like when I look at all his content, and I've listened to dozen of hours, there's some interviews that he makes, and I'm like, how can you fucking be so off? Like, interviewing a Palestinian Christian from Bethlehem that has one particular view of Israel, and this particular priest works for the Palestinian Authority. Like, so off. And then you listen to him talk about the preservation of the United States, and it's like candy. It's like, please, someone needs to speak up.
Well, the thing is too with him is he'll admit when he's wrong too. That's another thing that I find with like the political pundits. Like if they can't hold a long form conversation like what we're doing here, and you can tell like Rogan's filtered a lot of these guys through. Like
Right.
Bernie Sanders can't hold the water. I mean and I kind of liked Bernie at one point. I thought, okay, maybe this guy will change some stuff, right? But when I saw him on the Joe Rogan podcast, I mean, it was literally one of his shortest podcasts because he's throwing taglines
He has
out.
a script, right?
Yeah, and then once it gets to a certain shelf life and Rogan starts kind of opening him up a little
Can't get
bit, it's
beneath
over.
it.
I got to go.
There's
I'm
nothing-
on a campaign trail. And that's bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, I would love to see Rogan do Trump for 3 hours. I wonder if he can hold water.
How is he
he
never-
probably
He
could.
just did. Dr. Phil just
I
did
know.
a 3-hour.
Was it a 3 hour?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
How has Rogan never done Trump?
It's been a very controversial thing. They've talked a lot about it.
Yeah.
Because it's
I know.
Rogan's evolution
Do you
politically.
think Rogan must have gone for him? You think Trump's just
No.
not-
Rogan
He doesn't
said
want to
not
touch
been
that.
no.
willing.
He
He's
said
not been willing.
No, but he said that he would be willing. He actually did.
Recently.
Yeah, he did. He did say that.
Because even Dr. Phil, I'm sure he's a savvy person, but he's another essentially like he's a caricature. He's
kind of. Yeah.
yeah. It's not still
Authentic.
I'd love to see him
Yeah.
on Rogan. Let's make that happen.
Rogan, or even Jordan Peterson and Trump, because
That would
Jordan
be. Yeah.
knows
Well,
so many people close to Trump.
But the thing about Jordan Peterson, I think the reason why you smell his authenticity is because when he was doing his podcast a couple years ago, he was going and interviewing like everybody under the sun. It didn't matter what team you were on, if you want to call it teams, like Muslim, Jew, Christian, and
I mean,
everybody secretly
was
says
learning-
he's one of them.
Was,
But that's what they say
Right, right.
in the interview because he's so open and so authentic and so intelligent that it's like you can't really place him.
he's one of the most
Yeah,
accurate,
He has a heart.
honest human
Yeah.
beings.
You can find his heart.
Yeah. And I think it speaks through to you.
Yeah.
Because he is on the Daily Wire now. You know what I mean? Like he is like
I can't find Dr. Phil's heart. I've looked.
well, I've heard he's a really cool guy though.
Yeah.
In person.
I know
Like,
someone who has worked for him for
Right.
years.
Oh yeah,
And
we know the same person.
He's just
yeah,
a
yeah.
genuine Christian.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I still can't find it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my fault.
But I think
Did you guys find Tucker's heart?
Yeah.
I
You
found
did?
yeah no
Yeah,
I've
you
cause
found-
I've seen Tucker's
like his humility.
no he's just
his
like
humanity.
he's kind of just
so-
like a dude, like he's just a dude that's got a bunch of kids. He's like a good Christian guy, conservative. Like
I have more
I've
faith
seen
in him,
that side of him.
preserving the United States than most other people. Like Ben Shapiro's not going to try to, like, if we go up in flames, he's running to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Like Tucker is going to fight for the ideals.
Yeah, he like loves like
Of
he
what
you
we
see him
stand
like
for.
go like taking like an AR-15 and you saw something like he's
American.
he's all over the place. You know what I mean? Like I think
But you got to look
Fox,
into his tour. He's about to.
Oh
make-
yeah,
do.
I'll definitely check it out. But like if you see his network stuff from Fox, it's bullshit. Like a lot of it is just like, come on, dude.
Wasn't there some stuff that came out with him with like footage of him talking about Trump, audio, where he just
people have their evolution. Doesn't mean
whole
anything.
different person.
You can find
Then he was
audio of me a few years ago. It's probably very different than today. I mean, people
yeah,
evolve.
he's always been like when he gets pinned on like about Trump. There was a thing recently with him where he's like, no, I don't think he's like the savior. Like he's honest. Like he's just.
But it wasn't. It was the dissonance between what
the inversion
he was
of what-
portraying and then what he was. It wasn't so much.
I've even seen that a little bit.
Yeah.
Listen, I believe there's a lot that we don't see. And when you look at Vivek Ramaswamy, you kind of go, okay, you can.
He's an interesting one.
You can
though.
judge a man by what you hear him say and how he acts. Look at Tucker Carlson. Like, what's the chances that you and I are going to meet either of them? I don't know. Maybe never. But it's like, okay, how do you judge? You listen to a person long enough. You see other people interview them, and then how do they respond under pressure? Is it consistent? Are they painting a particular worldview that you can trust? I mean, like,
What do you think about Vivek?
I don't have a opinion.
Oh, you've never his long. He's an intelligent guy, man.
Savvy.
He's a savage.
I heard him do an interview and then he dropped off, right?
Well, no, but he's got a huge podcast.
No, he has
though.
a huge podcast.
It's called The
No,
Truth.
he dropped out of the running.
Yeah, but his podcast is blown up.
Is he? Do you think he's going to vie for like a vice president?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. He said like if Trump had a cabinet office open for him, he's
Is that
down.
your prediction that Trump's going to pull him in?
Everyone that interviews him, the first question is like,
Yeah,
"Would you
that's
accept
all
vice
they want to
president?"
ask him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So maybe we could end it with what's the prediction? Do you think Trump's going to win?
Everyone that gets asked that question, the answer usually sounds like this: if the election was today, 100% yes. The question is, would they even let him?
Now that he's
But what's that little
convicted-
meme? Joe Biden still has a majority of people counting the votes.
Yeah, I know.
I just think it's fascinating what a just loaded question that is. You know,
It's a loaded
There's a
question.
few questions right
But,
now.
and then people go like,
that you could
what,
ask
if he becomes
they
president,
would have that much potency to them.
But if he becomes president, what if?
What about
he's the
should
last
he
elected?
win? Should he win? That's even more provocative.
Yeah.
Should Trump win, or should we have another 4 years with Joe Biden?
I think they should. Biden,
I mean, I think my best
while he
argument.
shits himself in his pants.
One of the strongest arguments, I don't know if it's strongest, but there's something about like the reaction that the country had to Trump being elected the first time, what that brought out. It's almost like a leeching of some sort of latent disease that is in the country.
Right.
And it was the wokeism and the social justice warriorship, all of that. And if he came back, I would brace myself for what would be next.
But we need to cleanse that.
But that's what I mean. It'd be
we need to cleanse.
part of me
that
just
in our
doesn't want to
country.
deal with it because
We have to, otherwise it stays under the surface. Like immigrants, we got to deal with that.
But
like
honestly, can
arrogant
he do
and
stuff?
ignorant youth who believe in Marxism. I'm sorry, you go to North Korea.
So just like bring it on. Let's
We
just
have to, or you lose the republic.
yeah. So you just
gotta
leach it out, drain the swamp.
I didn't know Chris would be a Trump supporter. Dang, that's crazy.
I've noticed when he leans into certain things because he actually disagrees. But I'm like, yes, you're describing it.
Oh, that's so funny. So back to the question: Do you think he's gonna win, Chris?
If I had to guess now, I would say yeah.
Cal?
Do I think he's going to win? I think he's going to win, just like he won the last election. And I think they're going to do everything to take it away.
Yeah, I agree with the take it away part. I think they're gonna do,
And I would welcome
they're gonna pull Houdini on
Civil
him.
War.
But I think they're gonna pull like a Houdini, like they're gonna do a switcherooski with Biden.
Yeah.
I think because the convention hasn't even
They're
happened yet.
screwed, dude. Biden is.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be
insane.
Michelle or it's gonna be Newsom.
Yeah.
And I hate to say this, but I think because I really don't like Newsom at all, right? From a libertarian standpoint, like he's just absolute garbage. But he's got a much better chance.
I
of
just
going
don't
to toes
understand why we're staying
with Trump.
I just don't understand why we're staying so calm and nonchalant about it. Oh, Steve Bannon, sending him to prison. It's like, oh, okay, cool.
Oh, is he going to prison?
Yeah.
For
4
what?
months. And he's going to get out like a month before the election.
Who?
Really?
Yeah.
Who is?
Steve Bannon.
Steve Bannon is?
For contempt of Congress, while there's like, I don't know how many on the left, including Hunter, that
It's so.
we're also in
sticky.
contempt of just like the Republicans.
It's so sticky. Like who left cocaine in the White House? Like they don't know, but they do know.
Who do you think most Israelis would like to see come into office in the U.S.?
Between Biden and Trump?
Yeah.
Trump.
Yeah,
100%.
That makes sense.
100%. He recognized, I mean, he was
That
by
it-
far the best president.
What do you think the world, if we were to be so bold as to survey the entire world, what do you think the sentiment is?
Currently, if people want to see Trump or Biden, Trump. 100%.
No, but I think our enemies want Biden.
Yeah, but if,
For sure.
if you're interviewing people that are now seeing what's happening to their economic status and what's happening to the world security, I mean, Europe is going back to center right for a reason. The delusional progressive policies that are not working.
One of my aversions to Trump is actually the nationalism. This idea of
American first.
America first.
You don't like that?
I don't.
Why?
It seems weak to me.
How so? In what context?
Like, it's just, let's just worry about our little home.
But that's not what it means. American first means let's first be a demonstration of perfection. Let's demonstrate what it is to lead, and then let's bring the world with us.
I agree with Cal.
If we don't have a border, if we have a bunch of homeless people and we can't demonstrate, no, this is what a functional society looks like, a working economy looks like.
A democratic republic.
I like Nietzsche's argument, which is the measure of a strong society is the amount of parasites that it can hold.
Which we got tons.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The measurement of a healthy society
Whatever
is
that's
how
equation
many
makes you
a strong society.
Yeah.
Is that like your immune system can stay healthy regardless of its parasites?
If you imagine like a big organism that
Okay,
just has all of these
but with healthy
bacteria
borders,
on
it could do that. With good policies,
our
it could do that.
homelessness is actually a byproduct of our wealth. And the idea, you go to any city and there's a proportionality to the degree of wealth and the degree of poverty that exists in those areas.
Yeah, but so much of
and
that
just to
could be
become like a little like a
solved.
Singapore where everyone's kind of nice and there's no trash on the street and we just kind of stay in our little homes like a little shire, like a little hobbit, to me the vision of America being something that is, it's been lost because it's been framed as colonial, but let's be leaders in the world. Let's be strong. Let's be let's intervene.
But I'm
Let's
sorry to
have
tell
a
you,
say.
if I'm looking for a sponsor in AA, I'm not looking for a very fucking dysfunctional human who would be like, oh, that's a good example of a dysfunctional human being that I want to have them lead me. Like I look for someone who, if I'm looking for a fitness trainer, I'm looking for someone who's really good at what they're doing. If we want the European Union and the Middle East to look to America towards its economic suggestions, to put it mildly, well, we have to demonstrate.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I feel that it's a bowing out of the world stage, and to me, that feels like
I think that's a false, like the
retreat.
isolationism. I think it's a false premise. It's a false interpretation of American First. American First mean let's be the beacon, let's be the shining light on the hill.
Yeah,
of
wouldn't
what we
you
were intended to
rather
be.
be part of a country that is striving towards the best ideals?
Has pride.
Yeah, than be a part of something that's just like secular, whatever goes. Chase the ball to the floor, Dostoevsky.
Yeah, but I guess we just start framing it in different ways.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
bring the jobs back, turn the factories back on. Like let's stay, let's just do our thing and let's stay out of everyone's business. To me,
I don't think that.
We can't technically do that.
We can't
because
do that.
We're literally
No,
like.
no, I don't think
we're
isolation.
We're
is
securing
borders.
the border. We're securing the seas. Like we have. I mean,
everything is enmeshed. The financial
Right.
picture in the world and the way the economy works.
I think a level of globalism is not going to go away. There's an interconnectedness that now exists on every domain, but we need to have a fucking backbone. And now we just have a shitting senile idiot. Well, idiot would be a compliment.
I mean, I'm with you on that. Like, it is embarrassing. And I know the videos are, some of the videos are cut, but did you see that last one where it looked like he shit his pants? That was so funny. Like, even though that might just be he was looking for a chair. This is Biden. The
soundtracks that people added.
Oh, my God. So freaking funny. Like, you got to laugh at it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
It is. You want
God help us.
even like you mentioned.
you want competence, I don't know.
Maybe that was when we were having sushi earlier, but you talked about this idea of, that here in America, the way it is that our president is like as a high level manager.
Right.
And
We
it's
need
not
to
a
go back
god,
to
it's
that.
not
That's why I'm a
king.
libertarian. It's not a king. It's not a deity. We don't worship our government.
Jordan Peterson always had the
also
argument to have a king in a sense of like a.
But the kings have been tried out and they don't work.
But we also can't do away with the king.
Not
the
sure
reason
about
I don't think
you can. Decentralization and constitutional republic.
Yeah, but that's just anarchy, and
It's not anarchy.
Would you go
Decentralization
back to a king?
is-
Would you go back to a monarchy?
Yeah,
Me too.
yeah.
I would not. I would not.
When people go like
I've
Trump
been-
is
I've
going to
been-
get elected and it's going to be his last election, I'm like,
I've been gargling
And-
way too much Nietzsche to be like a democratic thinker now.
No. I'm talking
Why?
Nietzsche.
Is he a pro?
He's an elitist.
Yeah, but what would he say about Bitcoin?
I don't know. What would
Oh,
Friedrich Nietzsche
I
say
want to
about
hear
Bitcoin?
about the elitism. Can you
Well, not
explain?
the idea that every person deserves an equal vote is ludicrous.
Well, but they don't though.
Because if
Not
they
in a
haven't
constitution.
contributed,
Yeah, it's not.
like if they haven't contributed to society, why give them a
If
vote?
they have if they're not
Stake.
competent,
Well, then the landowner should only get a vote.
By the way, Vivek Ramaswamy actually makes that argument.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You should
it's a-
only be
it's-
able to vote if you're paying taxes.
Or if you're a
And have
landowner.
gone through different-
Or if you're a
Right.
landowner.
Yeah,
That's the way it used to be.
yeah. If you had a stake,
If you have
You were
skin
contributing,
in the game,
right.
then you get to decide. Because somebody that has skin in the, I love his argument. Somebody that has skin in the game. I mean, when I pay my property taxes every year, it's a lot of money, right?
Right.
It's like the rent sometimes that people pay just for the whole year. You know what I mean? And the policies I'm going to vote for are probably going to be better for the people that don't have skin in the game yet.
Right.
And
I mean-
it will propel them so they can get skin in the game.
and people that
The
went
American
to war
dream.
were
Yeah.
actually defending their family.
Right.
It's like a nation state.
Yeah.
Like I actually knew the
Yeah.
people I was defending rather
Yeah.
than like a hired.
And even though I'm wary of Tucker Carlson, and even though when the Trump question is asked me, I dodge it more than JD even. There's so if I look
But
at
I'm voting libertarian. I just do. I don't know. I can't. The two-party system, like
if I look at
Yeah.
Don't be a part of the problem.
For me, this is just a window into my temperament. If I look at the United Kingdom, for instance, there's one of the last monarchies is there effectively, even though it's sort of a puppet
Right.
situation.
it's not a monarchy.
But it's there, and there's all of these. There's this movement to try to humanize the royal family, and let's bring in, let's let them marry outside the family, and let's see who they really are. I like the Queen Elizabeth, who isn't a person, who has no life of her own.
I agree.
Who is completely devoted to the tradition of the
Yeah.
royal family.
She
And they
represents
only
something
marry
beyond-
people that are,
But you
that are-
just went to Europe and you're like, oh, this is better than America.
Is that what you're asking me?
I'm just making a statement.
Yeah, I did just go to. I just went to the United Kingdom. I don't know if I, necessarily thought it was better than America. It was, there were some pros and cons. But I'm just saying, when it comes, that's just an example of. You asked me if I think that there should be a king still. Just ultimately, I hate to see that.
By the way, Judaism believes in a monarch. Like that's the future government of Israel, not the modern state of Israel, but the next after the Messiah comes, there will be a king. So it's like I don't think the current system of government
I
in
truly
Israel will be
believe.
the same.
But I truly believe that there's a way of having, like, if you go down the blockchain and Bitcoin rabbit hole, there is a way of having like a higher order. Like think of Bitcoin as like the higher order. It's got rules to operate on this network,
Principles.
and you can just you can't manipulate the rules. If you don't play by the rules, you can't play the game, right? And anybody has access to it.
I never understood that argument because you just turn off the lights.
You can't. No, if you
Electricity, and
if you
there goes
if you
all
turn
of it.
but if you turn off the electricity, and let's say we go into like a nuclear holocaust, as soon as you get electricity back on, it's there.
So you're
It
saying,
doesn't.
like-
It doesn't get
You're saying like
erased.
if you turn back on the pyramids, you're gonna be back.
Yeah, but did they have electricity back then? I mean, we don't know. I mean, maybe, right? But
Probably,
I'm just saying, like the thumb drive that has my crypto on it, right?
Are we gonna go there?
Well,
Is that-
no? But that's the ancient aliens.
Yeah.
But the thumb drive,
It's like hundreds of
the
hours.
thumb
of
drive has been
conversation.
offline for like years. It's not connected to the internet, and as soon as I plug it into any computer, it's there.
Can
The
we-
algorithm's there.
Can we have that and a king, or
No, I don't think, because I think
I think we can.
No,
Just like you could have the United
could.
States current government and have voting decentralized on the blockchain. Have its finances.
You could literally
budgets.
have everything on a blockchain. It could be going back to the pyramid. This idea could
amount
be
of things we've talked about in 10 minutes.
No, I know, but this idea of smart contracts and blockchain,
Yeah.
could it's so revolutionary. It could be from like our future selves or something. You know what I mean? It could be like alien technology. This idea has never been.
We don't even know where it comes from.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's like crazy. It's like the wheel. Like who invented the wheel?
Aliens.
Or the Jewish people.
Or the
and their specialness could come from the same source as
maybe the Jews
I believe that. He's just making fun of me.
as blockchain technology.
Maybe the Jews invented. Maybe Satoshi Nakamoto is really just a Jew. Right? It's but great. Let's use that bitch. You know,
I mean, who brought liberty and free speech and anti-slavery? Like, did they come from the Egyptians or the Persians?
Certainly not.
Oh, they came from the Enlightenment. We're all fucking Jews by majority.
Well,
just rebelling against
funny. One of my
religion
favorite philosophers,
Jewish ideals.
But one of my favorite philosophers is Bront Spinoza, and he was a Jew.
Was
we
he
talk about
Spinoza a
this?
Jew?
Huh? Yeah, he was a Jew.
Can we
but
talk
he was,
about the majority of the Enlightenment, the individuals in the Enlightenment were actually Jews?
Yeah.
Like
right. Well,
actually
he was
just rebelling against.
Yeah, he's part of that. He's part of that. But he came up with the idea that God is everything, and he kind of solved it like a math equation.
I thought that was Bill W.
No, but
you know, it was Founders Day. That's
right.
Yeah. So, but he was kind of excommunicated from the Jewish community because his idea was blasphemous, right? To the fundamental Jewish belief of like what God is.
So Judaism, Hasidism, or Jewish mysticism, when they talk about God as one, is basically the distinction that Jordan talks a lot about. He's been talking a lot, God is not a thing. It's all there is God. Like the oneness of everything, the inclusivity of all vibrations, of all space,
all atoms,
that the
all
vibration
plasma.
happens in, all light emanating from its one creator, the creator that is the oneness of all things.
And Spinoza's argument was that there's Descartes created dualism, right? There's like mind substance. This is the simple, and then there's physical material substance, right?
Yeah.
And that's like Cartesian dualism, right?
And that's so weird when they set things with such affinity and they didn't even know what they were actually looking at.
They didn't
tools to look at.
Yeah, they didn't have it. But Spinoza said no. There's one fundamental, substance in the universe, and that substance is God. And he solved it pretty. He's pretty convincing. He's making a resurgence too.
It's funny because
of his beliefs.
So, Adonai, Adna, or Yahweh, actually translates, or if you read it out, would be Hoya, Hoiva, Ve'yia. God was, is, and will be. It's not a substance in the context of the name. When we refer to it as Yahweh. Most of the time, as our minds will go like Father, you think of your father. Brother, you think of brother. God, you think of this entity somewhere that I can't grasp but I have ideas about. Versus, no. We're talking about the inclusivity of all vibrations that always was, is, and always will be. The continuation of existence.
And what good does that do to sort of create it's something that encompasses everything.
Correct.
It's universal. You're going down the Nietzsche.
It's a reductionism, just to have something you can say, everything is subsumed by one thing, and so what?
But even your boy did that same thing with the internal recurrence theory.
No, I mean
it drove him crazy.
I'm not even poking. I'm just wondering, like, what does that do? Where are we with that? So God is everything.
So hold on. So you're only talking about one aspect of God. So we have to qualify this conversation.
Okay.
Because why is he getting so excited? He's like all Nietzsche'd out.
He's like.
That's why I'm wanting
the red rocket's coming out.
I know. I want no. I would love this because the fundamental statement by Jews like Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hashem Elokeinu. So we can talk about many different things. One being like, the different names that qualify the nature in this thing that we call God, which for each individual will be its own contextual experience. Why is he laughing?
I'm just thinking of I'm just Nietzscheing the whole thing.
He hates universals.
Yeah.
I want to hear this argument.
Yeah,
but
it's a great argument.
Well, there's the idea of a claim,
but it's not universal.
There's a claim to an understanding of God
that
serves its purpose. It serves as a way to be bigger than. It's like a will to power, if you will. That
Okay,
you have a claim to a certain type of esoteric understanding. And
but I don't because
but
these concepts.
I'm not saying you per se, but I'm saying
lost.
you generally.
Just the statement.
Because when I get up
yeah.
in the morning, I've been waiting for this moment, for this conversation. I swear, because we've talked about, like, before we were going to talk about Israel Palestine, we were going to talk about God.
Yeah.
And like, I wake up every morning. I don't know what your morning practice is, but we've talked about in the last few hours of, okay, what is like religious utility or religious practice or prayer or meditation? Like, it happens in a real time in a real place. So you wake up in the morning. For me, when I go into meditation or when I do my Jewish prayer practices, I'm constantly contemplating, being like, am I talking to myself? Or am I like just like self-talk about ideals that make me feel good? Or am I actually standing in front of the mystery? And like, mystery is not the right word, because it's like standing in front of all the things that I don't understand, which is the very definition of mystery. But like, am I invoking a consciousness that I'm a part of that go beyond my cognition and my heart and my nervous system, and I'm aligning myself with a intelligence that is relevant, significant, personal to me in that particular moment. So if I ask for direction to, like, let me see selfishness and self-centeredness as I go through my day, let me pause when I think that I'm fucking running the show. Like, am I reminding myself of particular ideals, or am I actually standing in front, so to speak, of my creator? And am I separate from my creator? By very definition, I'm not, because I'm
And
just...
could you ever not stand in front of your creator?
Correct. I don't think so. But like, but there's a from my nervous system, there's a different experience before prayer, while prayer, and after prayer. And that's real. That's almost like real.
Some people would just say that it stops there. That prayer and meditation is great because look at the science. There's certain things that it does to your brain, and it helps you do X, Y, and Z, which is.
But I have issue with the word even God, because when I speak of God and you speak of God, you're speaking about the God based on your reference points, everything you've ever read, all your meditative experiences, all the experiences, things that you've watched. So your entire universe of billions of pieces of data that make up when you say God, you're referring to a space. And it's like two different universes. If I looked into if I can actually see what you're seeing and what you're feeling, and if I looked at mine, you will literally be looking at two different planets.
Strangely,
that's an interesting concept.
But you're
true.
Yeah.
Just to get personal, your definition.
My own, what's the word? Like avatar. Different colors, different sensations, different reference.
Is it just the universe seeing itself? That's it. That's all we are.
You're back in the loop.
Your description of God is remarkably similar to my description of God. When you describe,
like, it's a placeholder.
It's a sense.
Of a word.
It's a sense felt. It's it's a place you go, and it's a feeling. And I can just do it right now, or I think, as I talk to you,
But you're not describing God. You're describing what you mean when you say the word God, as in you go into yourself, so to speak, and you go into like
there's a conscious
an
awareness,
inquiry,
and then there's just a communion that can be affected,
and it has real implications and real application and real felt, changed. Physiological, neurological sense.
Well, and there's a mini death in that too, right?
How so?
Well, just the idea, a lot of other spiritual kind of practices. There's the idea of the ego death.
Yeah.
Right. There is a little
dying of self.
You're kind of just for a second there.
Or by self forgetting one finds.
Right.
In order to access that space, you have to actually.
But I think that's the diminishing of a filter.
Yeah.
It's like what you're.
Okay. That's a good way of looking at it.
It's actually blocking out other things.
Right.
That's a Chuck C. A lot of his writing.
But then there's the idea that those things you're blocking out are God because God is everything.
Right. Right. I don't know. I was driving.
It's a realization.
To Orange County I was driving to Orange County yesterday, and I started having a panic attack. I don't know why, but, some part of my fucking brain decided that it's going to freak out. So my nervous system was playing. And I got to this point where I'm like, am I going to pull over? Am I going to get to the right lane just in case if I need to pull over? What if I get too dizzy? And I just started praying like I was a fucking truck driver. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, really? And I get to this point sometimes in my own personal suffering. I get really vulgar with God, whatever you call God. Mm-hmm. I just get to the point where I'm like, if you want to fucking kill me, kill me. But I'm just going to choose that every breath I take from this very second, you are willing. So if you will whatever you want. I'm turning my will, my life over, my want and my desire, my actions and my thoughts to this force. And, I love it, the great mystery. All you're basically saying is like, it's always going to stay anonymous and you're never really going to understand it, but it's going to be a place you're going to refer to. You're like, can you give me something more fucking concrete? Hence the cross makes so much sense and has for me for so long. And I keep wishing, hoping, praying, which is kind of funny, that Judaism will have, like, give me something to grasp on.
You need a target.
Give me a target.
The cross
literally,
does make a great target.
Literally.
Well, and that's what
literally.
But like sin is
give
missing,
me a thing
missing
to
the
hold
target.
on. So when I'm saying I'm bearing my cross, of course it's tangible. Of course I can grasp it. You're like, you're suffering. Be Moses. Be Joseph. Be Reuven. Be Yaakov. You're like, give me 1,000 different names. At this point, yeah, of course I can read about them and learn their attributes. But for me, it's like
they never had the balls to just raise one thing and say, "Here we are." They
Give
couldn't.
me
They
a
couldn't commit.
Well, they tried the golden calf.
Yeah, that's not. There's
you
not. There's
you
not.
have no idea how right you are.
They don't have as many bumper stickers.
They
for
were
that.
looking for a tangible
Yeah,
thing to hold on to.
and maybe it's
Yeah,
good they never found
course.
one because there's a sacrilege to be had in false idols. Right?
And even Jesus warned against it. So he didn't mean for that to become
The cross.
It was a demonstration.
Yeah. Right. It's a symbol.
as
now.
in take your pain and come to the Father. Don't let it be somewhere where you get stuck. Just remember this is a burden you're taking on voluntarily in order to fulfill your
it's funny
mission.
because what you're talking about, I showed you the cold plunge that I
No
did.
Jew or rabbi should watch this episode. I have no idea.
No, but like the cold plunge is a great thing because we're so attached to our bodies, and then there's a point when I get out of the cold water every morning where I'm not my body. You know what I mean? Like
you've transcended.
It's like it's
your
just
minimal
it's a micro
preference.
moment where I'm just there. You know what I mean? There's this presence, and it's like I don't have really control of my body for a little, because when you freeze at that temperature, it hurts, and then it doesn't hurt, and it's weird. It's such a weird, and you've done it too. It's this little thing, and I think maybe that's probably why I've become probably addicted to it now. I'm addicted to God, or trying to find Him.
It's fine. It's all right. But talking about the reason I was saying I was looking forward to this conversation is because I think I spoke about it once. So let's bring up this one story and then let's dissect it, because there's two stories that are very similar. I'm in rehab upstate New York.
Drug and alcohol rehab? Yeah.
Yeah, drug and alcohol. And it feels like a monastery at times, and sometimes it feels like I'm hanging out with a bunch of gang members, current and ex-gang members. People are leaving, and I'm finding out that they're dying after they left. Homicide, suicide, drug overdose, etc. So I'm there, upstate New York, surrounded by snow because it's in February. And then all of a sudden they're talking to me, my counselor's program director, they're talking about me going to Florida after rehab. It's like, you don't want to go back to the environment that you've just come from. And I'm looking at these brochures and I'm like, Florida, bikinis, beaches, pina coladas, gorgeous beaches. And it was so deceptive because that brochure looked like I'm going to paradise. And I'm like, okay, lots of logistics got worked out. I'm going to Florida to this halfway house. I arrive in Florida in raining season. It is so fucking humid outside. And it's pouring rain. And it's close to midnight. And some fucking dude picks me up from the airport to take me, it was the counselor drove me. And I'm expecting to arrive at a resort. I get into a dark neighborhood with a little home that has 4 rooms with bed bug
Bunk beds. And bed bugs, probably.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
Bang buds.
Bunk beds.
Bunk beds. Wow, I had them growing up.
Well, the bugs down in Florida are insane too.
But hold on.
Yeah.
If I sat and they gave me the top bunk, and if I was going to sit up middle of the night, my head will get chopped off by a fan. And I'm convinced there's roaches. And you would know this term, when you come to, most of the time it's you're drunk or high. But I don't remember what happened from when the counselor left and left me to go to sleep. I grabbed all my stuff, no phone in pocket, no money. It's pouring rain outside, and I'm holding my luggage, and I start walking. 3 blocks later, or maybe 1 block or 2 blocks or 3 blocks, I don't know exactly, I come to. And it's pouring rain, and I hear a voice. Kal, who said it's going to be different this time? I literally got fucking goosebumps. I started pinching myself. I was like convinced someone was in the fucking bushes talking to me. And it was like I watched a conversation. I don't really know if it was going to be any different.
Was it a feeling?
No, it was a voice.
It's an actual voice.
An actual
So
voice.
you're schizophrenic?
I don't know.
I'm kidding.
I had the same experience. I was in a detox in Northern California.
So what is that?
I was sitting there on the couch. The TV was on. It was nothing special. And a thought occurred to me in my head in a way that one hadn't before. And
Right, a new thought.
Yeah, a new thought. And it said something like, it's not about sobriety, really. I don't have what it takes to produce anything like a happy, meaningful life for myself, by myself. This project is doomed to failure.
Well, see, it's so funny because my thing, that's why I asked the feeling. I was just joking.
And it was a lack of power.
Yeah,
Right.
it's my dilemma. Yeah.
Realization.
Yeah.
Right.
Defeat.
And finally, I needed and wanted God. You could argue that I needed God for a long time, but didn't want it.
Or you were worshiping the wrong gods.
But based on one very crystallized, clear, spoken almost thought that occurred from God knows where. It's a paradigm shift.
God knows where.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift.
Right.
That occurs.
Well, it's funny. The reason why I asked if it was a feeling, because mine was like a feeling. I didn't hear a voice per se. I was in and out, eating a cheeseburger with my sponsor, and we just gotten done doing this arduous work, in the 4th and 5th step. And there was something, this feeling came to me, and now this is almost 20 years ago, right? Yeah. And it was, you're going to be all right no matter what, as long as you keep, like, doing this work. And it was. But
you had that thought simultaneously.
It's just it was just like this feeling of like warmth.
Yeah.
And like, oh, okay, there's a way. There's a way. Right? It was like something was trying to push me towards a way. It's very similar to both your guys' experience.
Like divine intervention.
It's interesting, right?
As far as a realization, and a divine intervention as far as a message being embedded.
Yeah.
It's a strange one. Like my mom calls me. I'm in San Francisco. I think we talked about this experience. And she's like, calls me one day and she goes, Kal, I need you to sit down. And this whole thing ensued. I don't want to go into detail at this very moment. And she's like, well, you have the whole weekend. Take your time. I need you to think about it if you're not okay with it. And I literally heard a voice again. Don't punish the sons for the sins of their father. And I was like, Mom, I know the answer. She's like, I'm not even finished asking you the question. She's like, I know the answer. So put all these individual stories, and then I come there in the morning, and I've shared at meetings so many times. I can't stay clean today from the shower I took last week. I can be satisfied from the food I ate a week ago, and then apply that to spirituality. I every morning, regardless of how inspired I am, regardless if I just worked out or did my meditation prior, I put on my tefillin, like Jewish prayer practice, and I'm like, I don't hear any voices. Like, where are you? What the fuck? And sometimes I just kind of go into this thing that I call a placeholder. And this is a cool idea that I've been playing around with, which is like I'm not feeling the thing. Like I'm not responding to inspiration.
I'm not connected.
I'm doing the practice.
Going through the motions.
I'm going through the motions because I want to stay in the doing of the thing. Just like if I don't feel like working out, I'm just going to do 10 push-ups because I did the thing, but it wasn't my ideal. It wasn't like body, mind, and spirit, spontaneity in the moment, felt fully honed in the zone.
God's not getting me high,
Right.
but I'm still chipping.
But that's where the cross, that point, that thing that I'm referring to is like, here I am. I want to know you. Here I am. I want to understand you. Here I am. I want to feel like I'm being directed by you. And I'm like, am I going back to like talking to the butler? Hey, I want some more wine. Hey, I'm kind of hungry. Can you get me a fucking sandwich?
Yeah, I want more of that feeling.
I want more.
I want more truth.
Like, here's my list. The bitch, my lover, better sex, better place to live, new car. You're like, what just... You went from like, you were on top of the mountain, on your knees, in surrender, and you allowed something to come. You didn't even choose to allow. He shows up when he wants to show up. Like, these things are not simple.
It's a similar arc to, and if you think about, we're talking about maybe the West and us all watching maybe the decline of Western society and wanting to do something about it, but not being able to.
Right.
And the parallel between that and, say, your own personal life, and suddenly realizing a disconnectedness to this power you might call God, and maybe a resurgence of selfish desires and petty motivations,
all the deadly sins,
but not really being able to affect a change in it. And then think about all of the people in the world that are experiencing these similar arcs in their lives, and the extent that these masses of people constitute these civilizational, I don't know, formations like the West or the U.S. or whatever you call it. It's just like an ocean.
So we're now in this moment where we're like, okay, we remember you once were, but we don't feel you. We're fucking like downing out as a civilization,
reaching, trying to feel that thing maybe once again.
And perhaps it shows up, God shows up, revelation shows up.
When it wants to.
When it wants to.
When it does.
Or when it's necessary. Yeah. Or you die. And it's just the internal recurrence theory, and we're just repeating over him.
He's a nihilist.
No, I'm not. Definitely not.
So, your reference and locale of godhood, of godness, in your reading of Nietzsche, where do you see parallels, or how do they conflate or inform each other?
I mean, I just keep thinking about this through God as an attempt to essentially overcome reality. That if I can really commune with God and experience some higher truth, through that, I am going to place myself above everything.
So that's like status seeking of sorts, using the spiritualism of its language
to overcome,
of its search,
to overcome
hierarchy. Like, I'm a priest.
Well,
you're a peasant.
But his whole thing is that man must be overcome.
But he doesn't talk about revelation. He talks about the personal experience.
Yes, he does. He talks about everything. He's the number one contrarian probably.
But he also describes. I mean, right now I'm reading Human All Too Human, and there's this description of the religious experience as being sort of just a type of excitement that one feels, and the vicissitudes one goes through because of these religious sensations that they feel. In a way that's more
sensations that people feel that they call it religious.
And there's a depressed type. There's kind of this self-flagellation of, I'm so sinful, I'm so awful, and that is,
I need salvation.
That's a personal view that is acquired in relation to an ideal that God represents, right? God is this perfect ideal that always stands at a distance from it. And from that, I can cast myself in this way that I am
So is that his
pitiful.
criticism of religion, or does he have an alternative to that?
No, he would say that we
Was he
invented that,
atheist?
though. No, he would say we invented that.
I mean,
We invented God. and we killed him. That's like his
Right.
famous stuff,
But
right?
so his opinion is like was he a creationalist?
I mean,
Materialist?
No, it's will to null. It's will to power.
Will to power.
That's all
What does that mean?
So will to power is this idea that there's
one of his
maybe
biggest
all these
ideas.
different drives or wills that we have: will to truth, will to
to null.
survive,
Yeah.
And he's saying those are just instincts.
essentially. But the will to power is like the big,
religious
it's the
domain.
big daddy will that we're all driven by, and it's effective.
But that's just a great analysis of like what's so as far as we can observe humans. Does he believe in the soul? Does he believe in a source?
I don't know, but let me finish this train of thought, which is the idea that the will to power is unavoidable.
We all have it.
Yeah, and that effectively there are different levels of the will to power. There's different there's more sophisticated and less
Like domains.
sophisticated ways that this, and you could think about this when it comes to people who are maybe alcoholics, who are untreated, who are active. There's this description of a person like that is very resentful and very bitter and maybe complains a lot. If I'm pathetic and I complain a lot, there's a manifestation of a will to power that is born from that, which is that I'm effectively, my complaining is like it's like an assault on you, and it's an assault on me, and it's a way for someone who has almost no foothold to still express a will to power. Now, this will to power can show up in more sophisticated ways. In the highest way, he would describe this as like an Ubermensch or an overman. He has his own ideal.
Like he called Jesus an Ubermensch, just
Yeah.
to give you an example.
Like
of
an
one.
ideal version of a human.
Yes.
Yeah. But there's still...
And that's where the Nazis took the idea of like
Exactly.
the
Yeah,
ideal
they
Aryan.
perverted
Yeah.
his stuff.
But
I get that.
but
But
he
that
thought
particular concept,
yeah.
that's where they
he
took
thought that the artist and the saint and the philosopher
We're the top three.
the highest representations of a will
Okay,
to
I was saying like
power.
I don't.
And so he talks a lot about this ascetic ideal. So like in the genealogy of morals, this idea of asceticism or of depriving oneself of something, and the way that this is still it's a type of spiritual flexing ultimately, and that there's not
Okay.
an escape from this idea of trying to gain power over something or to overcome something.
So I get,
and
that,
so
that
even
could be
a-
like distinctions of ego. Like he's putting classification.
He's probably the godfather of that.
even a Buddhist who just is able to meditate
He's not like,
and,
that's a type
and just to stay
of
very
will to
still.
power.
It's a will to power. It's an idea of overcoming, nature and what makes us anxious.
Okay,
and
but so does he? So where does the transcendent come in his?
I don't know.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it comes into the internal recurrence theory. Actually, that's where it ends. It's a bleak.
But that's also that's not addressing transcendence. He's just saying
It
like
does, though.
he has an hypothesis of perhaps this is the way it is, meaning in a billion years from now you're reliving this particular life. When planet will unfold itself again, you will arrive at a Holocaust 70 years ago, and then we're going to arrive at my grandmother having 1,000 offsprings, and then I'll be one of them, and we'll be sitting here talking about Trump.
I mean, he would
and trying to talk about. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No, that's what I say a lot.
I mean, I think he would believe that in order to survive, one relies on a great many untruths.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
the idea of
But that's like
the idea,
delusion
for
of most
instance,
people.
a God that is everything and everything is subsumed by is a fantastic untruth that is very potent and very powerful. And
But he can't prove that, so it's like a stance he makes, and it's a possibility.
Yeah.
Like I constantly think, like, what if we made all this up?
yeah, and so survival to flourish, all of these things are contingent on the acceptance of a great many untruths. But the task of a person who is willing to seek the truth in a really honest, upfront way is for the meek and mild, to say the least. That most people that are driven to or built in a way that they want to go down that road will actually be killed by it early.
Which road?
The road of seeking truth and being willing to discard untruths.
Will be killed early.
Yeah, because a lot of the untruth seeking, this idea of being propped up by convenient myths that keep the herd together and keep everybody safe. those are they're incredible survival tactics.
Yeah.
But there are some people who would be compelled to live on the outside of the herd.
Oh God, his philosophy is dark.
Yeah,
It's gnarly.
It's dark.
and
I hope he makes it out.
Yeah,
What?
I made it out. I don't know if
he started me down this road, but he didn't know how deep I was going to go.
He's reading every single
What
one
do you
of
mean
his
you
works.
came out? Like, if you read it?
I went deep down the. I still flirt with Nietzsche, and I'm a lot like you. Like, I'll read something or I'll listen to something, and then I'll say, "Fuck you, Nietzsche," and because I know that there's a lot of grains of truth in a lot of what he's saying, and I went really, really dark actually for a couple years.
So let's zoom out for a second. Let's say if you take everything that Nietzsche's ever written, and you think of it as software.
Yeah, like if it was an AI,
Right.
like a large
Take
language
everything
model.
he's ever read and ever communicated as software. But now my question is, the thing that is watching and digesting the information, reading the software, what is that?
Yeah, it's the idea of like consciousness.
Conscience.
Yeah.
Consciousness.
Yeah,
And all of these philosophers, they never touch it.
Yeah.
They just have a beautiful concocted
It's
philosophy. Freud did
Yeah.
it, Jung did it, Nietzsche did it, Aristotle did it. And it's like, yeah, maybe. But why is your ideology any more convincing than Christ or
It's not.
Judaism? It's
Yeah.
not.
it's not. Yeah.
and he would
But it's a mind.
he would build that.
So,
The idea that he would say that most philosophies, they say much more about the philosopher than they do about the philosopher.
Right.
Yeah. What if the truth was
or
a
like
woman?
the game
Yeah.
that it's creating, the characters in the philosophy, how they fit with the rest of it. It doesn't talk about the observer.
But the only way out is to form new philosophy.
But I do.
It's true.
Yeah. I mean, Nietzsche, he just rattles the cage ceaselessly, and there's something so wonderful about that.
There is something wonderful about him.
But
yeah,
then
for sure.
there is also something to be said about the person who at some point says, you know what, I just don't know. I'm just going to try to be a good person. I'm going to try to live a good
like
life.
we've exhausted
I'm
you
not
in
gonna
so much.
I'm not going to
You have no
overcomplicate it.
strength to even entertain another thought
I'm
that
just-
you're going to call it
Maybe that's
surrender.
maybe
I'm
that's
just going
the
to go,
answer,
Mr.
though.
Rogers, like I'm just going to be nice to my neighbor.
I mean, we
I'm
all
gonna-
had to be beaten down to submission.
Yeah.
Right?
What does the book say? If mere philosophies were...
Yeah. Sufficient. Many of us, whatever, a long
right.
time ago.
Exactly. And he's right about that.
Code of morals. Yeah.
Because if you actually did adopt Nietzsche's worldviews, I mean, you could pretty. I mean, a lot of guys have piggybacked off of him, and it really justifies that anything can go. Actually, if you really look at it,
if all of it is made
but
up.
it's been perverted by the Nazis and his sister, and like there's just a lot. The postmoderns jumped on board and said, "Oh, this is our guy," and honestly, I think if we were to resurrect him, he would be appalled. He'd be like, "Yeah, you guys are all just playing into my hand, basically."
Do you think he would? Do you think he'd be on Team Israel or Team Palestine?
He would be on. He'd be on Team Israel.
Uh-huh.
Because he's all about like power and like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's more.
I mean, he was kind
he
of
would
that.
say Hamas is life denial.
That's the way he was
sure.
different. There's
Yeah.
this idea that
And they are.
There was this idea that
They love death
Yeah.
more than we
Yeah.
love life.
him,
Yeah.
And they say that.
Freud, a Jew, influential Jew,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
And Marx are maybe the three most influential thinkers of the 20th century,
Right.
Something like that. But the place where Nietzsche and Marx differ so much is they both agree that there are strong people in the world and there are weak people in the world, but Nietzsche just wants to be on the side of the strong.
Yeah.
Which is
Well, he wants to make a callback. He wants to make a
Marx
callback to the blonde beast, and that
Yeah.
was perverted by the Nazis too. He has.
But
this
what
idea
Marx
of,
wants to do is he wants to be on the side of the weak because there's a larger number of weak, right?
Yeah.
Not only that, but
and
then
so
he
if
can
you can-
use other people's money to support his
Yeah, you
weakness.
can use the weak.
You like being the victim.
You be the strong on top of the weak, right? You become the leader of the weak, the
Right.
master of the weak, and there's so many weak that
That's what he
by
did.
doing that you can overpower the strong.
Yeah,
That's
you
what he
inherit
did.
the world.
He created
Yeah.
an entire philosophy, like the...
Marx is
Not
such
the
sloppy
revolution, what's the word
philosophy,
I'm
though.
looking
Like Marx is such a sloppy philosopher, though. He's cheap. He really is. Like compared to like Nietzsche, to me, it's like hard. I don't know why
He
they.
fucking begged for money. He
No,
lived
but-
off of other people's money.
No,
He was
no,
a sorry
but
ass.
well, the thing, but just if you read like the Communist Manifesto, which I've read, it's so full of universals and these weird things that don't make any sense. There's no way of tracking them back, like the master-slave dialectic, all that stuff. Like it just doesn't land. And to compare him to like Kierkegaard or Nietzsche or Kant or Heidegger, any of these greats, I think it's
not so much about his greatness, but just the level of his influence.
The level of his influence was crazy. Mm-hmm. I can get with that. But
I've often wondered if he was
his premises are sloppy.
And you saw how many people communism and socialism have killed. If he would justify it, like would his perversion?
No, he would say it's just the perpetuation of the war that needs to happen to make the proletariat. To get to that point,
the final utopia,
where the state is literally like God, basically.
But ultimately, it's on the back of a premise of care and fairness.
Yeah, and I think that's what speaks to people's hearts.
It's fascinating, just how, to the extent that in excess of care, fairness, compassion.
I think of it a lot, that you can take the very things that you're looking to have more of, and if you take it a bit too much, you're smothering the child.
Yeah,
mother wants to be kind to the child. You do
too much love,
too much of it, you're literally damaging.
Well, but that's
not enough. Use the term spoil.
Damaging. You literally have this like,
and that's the beauty of Hegel, the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. Like, there's always got to be, and that's why we got to have these conversations, and we got to have more and more and more
dialogue.
Of them. Marx's mom, Nietzsche's dad.
Yeah, and just battle it out until you get the overman.
Yeah. What time is it?
It's 11:30. I think. I mean, we've been. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a good place to end it, boys?
I guess. I mean, to sum it up, like
I don't know. We didn't solve much of the Israeli-Palestinian
we didn't
conflict, but I think it would be worth.
I think we could solve it though, like if we just kept talking long enough, right?
Well, it would solve itself after we're done. Before we're done.
It's very interesting. I mean, this is definitely a topic we can talk forever.
The
Jewish people, from its inception, or certainly since the destruction of the Second Temple, the 1st century, and the Romans sacked our temple, in our prayers, like literally the prayers that Orthodox Jews pray, morning, 3 times a day, we are faced towards Jerusalem. We pray for the return of the Messiah and to be returned home to Jerusalem, for the building of the 3rd temple. Every time a Jew gets married, they break a glass in remembrance of the temple. Every time you move into a new home, you create a section on the wall that you don't paint in order to remember the destruction of the temple. And the reason I'm saying, and I can keep going, literally hundreds of examples, every Jewish ritual, every single Jewish holiday, every Sabbath, every prayer, we have Jerusalem as the focal point.
What does that mean, the 3rd temple?
So Jews have had 2 temples on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
Okay.
Is there a
literal temple?
Yeah.
Like a building?
Yeah. Physical temple of priests, of music, of people from different nations.
And is there a temple now?
No. Right now there's the Dome of the Rock and a mosque and a church on the Temple Mount. Occupied, politically so bizarre. I mean, again.
And they want to get a temple up there again.
The Jews pray and await the building of a 3rd temple. So back to our conversation 2 hours ago, you take all this politics, you take all the theology, and you take all the like diplomacy of Saudi Arabia and Iran and Israel, and then the United States and the West being aligned with Israel, and then here's all the Palestinians and the jihadists and all the protests around the world. You look at what's happening in the world, and every single Jew, well, the reason I started making this point is, regardless of what the pink-haired, progressive, woke, deluded fuckhead who says, Israel are on occupied land, on the Palestinian land, pre-1948, where, no, there was British Palestine, British occupied territory. No, there was no Palestinian. Yeah, Palestine was referred to a particular land. But my point being, for hundreds of years, for thousands of years, we've prayed about that place because we've been there before. we've had our commonwealth there before. Now, you ask me how diplomatically, how are you going to remove the Dome of the Rock? How are you going to remove the mosque? How are you going to actually build a third temple? That's one of the most controversial conversations, because when Hamas started launching their assault on October 7th, they named the actual war and the actual assault referring to the Temple Mount. So we keep talking about diplomacy and we keep talking about land and politics, and it's a religious war. So this entire conversation can be summed up in what are the axioms Jews are, what are the places Jews are coming from an what's the word? How do you say it? The axioms, axiomatic positions, and Arabs. These are insanely deep ideological, theological conversations. Now, you look at me and you're like, oh, October 7th. Not about October 7th. It's about the next generation. What do I mean by the next generation? The Christians who are having all these big conferences around the world, who are messianic Zionists, and you're like, is it because Jesus is going to come back? Is it because they like want to ally themselves now with the Jews because we have the power, but they actually believe in Christ coming back? Some do. I've spoken to them. Some want to support the Jews and they just believe the Messiah is already here, like Christ has risen. Christ is king. Like he's in spirit. Christ is not a physical being. And the building of Jerusalem is a messianic coming of the prophecy coming alive. But it's like, what do I feel in my blood when I'm not in like, what does God Todd said and what is Douglas Murray saying? What does Jordan Beaton say about the political? Like, if you ask me what's in my heart, I would want to go fight with sword and gun to protect and actually build and to resuscitate the commonwealth of a third temple.
I have two questions for you.
Yes, sir.
One, do you feel Jesus in your heart?
Are you about to ask me if I'm ready to convert?
Just that question.
And are you ready to give your soul? And
do you feel it though? Can you get down with JC?
I have.
Like if you just entertain it in like an abstract way.
This is his way of being condescending.
No, it's not. No, I really mean it.
I have often, and it's not, I don't know where your question is coming from, but I can tell you when I've had many moments where what I was referring to earlier, I'm there and I'm confused and I don't know who I'm talking to and I don't know if he actually is listening to me and I don't, like, here's all these million concepts about God. I've had moments where I'm like, Christ, like, if you are true, if this, maybe millions of people are completely wrong, but if there's one chance that there was a figure, that the creator of the universe put him into human form, different than a soul in my body, human being, like the Son of God, what does that mean? But assuming that the creator of heaven and hell, well, the creator of the sun and the moon, a being or a power, a source, put Jesus Christ into this world, and he's meant to resuscitate. I don't even know what that means, but have I prayed, inquired, like, is there a particular type of consciousness or an energy that I will be possessed by if I invite it in? Have I gone
or even
there?
if you don't invite it in. I'm imagining like internalized homophobia, but like a Jew who's like, it's like this internalized like Christian, anti-Christian.
Oh, so you're like a hybrid.
Where it's like, I don't even want to believe in Jesus, but I just kind of do, and it's there, but I can't because I'm Jewish. And I'm like,
no. I don't have that, like, I believe and I don't want to and I don't want to admit it. No, I don't have that. I have that with, like, I only want to marry a Jewish woman. And then I go, what if she loves Christ?
Mm-hmm.
I've had that.
All right, here's another
Because
question.
they're so committed to the good,
Okay, here's
good
another question.
moral life.
Here's another question. Who's better, Jewish people or Muslim people?
Better.
That's nasty.
No, but I know the trap he's opening. I would ask you better in what do you mean by better?
Better.
He's tired.
Better in what context?
Just like, just better.
Okay, I'll answer that question. Okay. If valuing life over death is the measurement, then Jews.
Mm-hmm.
because we celebrate life, we mourn pain and death. Arabs celebrate death and have no regard for life. So from a Western mind, from a Judeo-Christian value standpoint, which I live in, I don't have a different position. Currently, what Arabs are calling for in the civilized world and what Jews are calling for in the civilized world, 100% Jews.
All right, I guess we're done there.
All right.
Now he has his starting point. Which one is better?
Oh my God. Is that it, boys?
That's it.
All right.
To be continued.
It's a wrap.